Good afternoon and welcome to the regular meeting of the Pitkin County Board of Commissioners on Wednesday, October 11th. I want to see if we have any additions or deletions. John?
I believe we have one addition to the agenda. Raya texted me, John, but I don't have the item. Are you aware of the addition? Dale is aware.
No, I cannot help you.
Dale,
here.
can you help me? Why don't you come up to a microphone?
The item in question is an ordinance authorizing a acceptance of an encroachment license from the Roaring Fork Transit Agency for the purpose of constructing a pedestrian bridge across the Roaring Fork River in Jerbozdale.
Okay.
And you need to vote to add that to the agenda.
I have a question. Do we have anything?
Yes, it's about to be
Okay.
brought to me.
It's hot off the press, you mean?
Yes.
Okay, I will make a motion to amend the agenda.
I'll second. I have a question. Is this added as a first reading, or is it an emergency?
First reading.
ordinance? Okay.
So make it a 6B, or 6B, or 7?
7B?
Yeah, it looks like it'd be 7.
No, it's not one reading, though. It's a 2 read, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Oh.
first reading, yeah, so 7, 6A or
Let's
7.
make it 6B.
Well, there isn't just 6A.
Well, we have a 6A right above it.
6B.
I don't have a 6A on here.
Well, you have a 6.
Yeah. So why would we go to 6B instead of 6A?
Whatever you want to do, Fancy.
Okay, so you're going to call that one A. All right, we'll go with 6B. So all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. And now we have public comments. Is there anybody here who would like to speak about an item that is not on today's agenda? Yeah, come on up.
Hi there.
Hi.
Mike Maple, 1250 Mountain View Drive. I'm aware that it's budget season and that some months ago, I believe at Commissioner Postman's impetus, there was some discussion about recognizing that there was potentially a massive windfall in property taxes for Pitkin County, as well as all of our other taxing jurisdictions as a result of the increase in property valuations. I haven't heard where that discussion went, but to the extent I was aware of what you all were talking about at the time, I was fairly disturbed by it, by the interest of some people in soaking the rich and trying to come up with programs that only benefited the less well-to-do. I don't consider myself to be, or my family to be, either one of those things. But my family's, my mother's, and my property valuations went up some 50%. And I assure you, our incomes did not go up 50%. So a 50% increase in our property taxes would be rather devastating and, in my view, completely unnecessary. An increase in the value of property does not create an increase in the demand for services. There may, certainly the cost of providing services has gone up in our community and in recent years, but not by 50%, I don't think so. As you start talking about budget season, I'm here to ask you to do the right thing. Our Pitkin County services and budgets should increase a modest amount, and our property tax mill revenues should also only increase a modest amount, rather than try and concoct ways to benefit some and penalize others. My suggestion to you is it's very simple, and I happen to operate as a taxing authority for a metro district. I understand, how property taxes work very well. All you need to do is appropriately adjust the mill levy. I understand there's some complications in the state of Colorado with temporary reductions and that sort of thing, but at the end of the day, it's incredibly simple. Take a look at your what is the reasonable and appropriate adjustment in total property tax revenue, and look at assessed value and come up with the resulting mill levy as opposed to taking a windfall. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to an item that's not on the agenda today? Anybody online, Abby? Okay, well then I'm going to close the public comments and go to commissioner comments. Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Thank you. I heard from our sheriff last week at a meeting that there is on the average one major traffic accident on our state highways in our county every day. That's the average. And you always hear about, you know, the traffic is delayed at some intersection, the Elgibel light, or by Basalt, or by Old Snowmass, or, you know, various locations. People are driving too fast. Some people are driving way too fast. And I think a lot of people are probably driving distracted, trying to do their cell phone at the same time as they're driving. They're following too closely behind the car in front of them, and if everybody's going too fast and you all of a sudden the light changes and somebody puts on their brakes, probably a lot of the accidents are just the car behind running into the one in front of them. So I urge everybody to slow down, enjoy the beautiful scenery we have around here. Don't follow so close. Leave some distance between you and the car in front of you. And if you are one of those ones who are driving 75 or 80 or 85, which some people are driving that fast on Highway 82, that's so extremely dangerous, and you need to slow down, please, for your safety and for the safety of everybody else on the highway. And also the convenience of everybody, because people have long detours and long delays sometimes getting to and from work because people were careless. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I just wanted to mention that I know we are all feeling the suffering and the death and destruction in Gaza and Israel. And as I was coming to work this morning on the bus, so I wasn't listening to the news, which I can hardly listen to right now. I'm sure that's true for everybody. I was thinking how incredibly lucky we are to live here, to live in America, first of all, where we haven't had war within our boundaries for a very long time, but particularly here. And I just hope everybody appreciates that on a daily basis, because we are very lucky. Okay. Anybody else have comments? Let's move on to the consent items. We have one. It's a single reading. It's the minutes of September 27th. Is there anybody who would like to discuss it, or I'll look for a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. We're going to go on to individual consideration items. First reading set for public hearings on October 25th, 2023. The first one is the resolution of the Board of County Commissioners establishing the formula for distribution of the municipal share of county sales tax revenue for the year 2024 as required by Resolution 78-121. And I believe Liz is going
Giving
to
us a
talk
hand.
to us about this.
Thank you.
Updated.
Thank you, Liz.
And here you go. John, you want one?
Thank you.
If anybody else needs one. All right, good to see you guys again. I am Liz Woods, the Finance Director for Picken County, and I am here to talk about the municipal share of the county sales tax revenue that we pass through to the incorporated municipalities within Picken County. So right now, that is the city of Aspen, the town of Snowmass Village, and the town of Basalt. This exhibit, we never have the information until we had it, the information yesterday, so that's why you're just receiving it today. We don't get August sales tax numbers until the first couple weeks in October. And this Exhibit A shows the breakdown of what is going to be distributed to each of the municipalities. Any questions? And this is an annual process, so I'm sure you remember doing this each year.
You know, is there a reason why this has to come to us every year rather than some of the more automated processes we've been able to enact?
It's how it's written, and we'd have to, I believe, do a resolution to change
It's
the
written in the
process.
original
It's written in the
passage
original
of the 2%
passage, yeah.
sales tax. Okay,
Yeah,
that's helpful. Thank
Do
you.
it by a
yeah.
resolution.
I think we'd have to go back to
It's
the
in,
voters.
it's part of the, I think, ballot language, if I remember
If
correctly.
I remember correctly,
So,
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is a public way for us to, you know, put the formula out there, what the percentages are going to be, and adopt it each year.
It's interesting that Picken County's not on this one, so we have to do some subtraction to get it, right?
So at the very bottom, sorry, you're right, I don't have it on there. So
We
we
have it on our
get
packet.
43%.
I'm sure it's close to our
Yeah.
packet,
This 57% is what goes to municipalities.
Yeah.
It's in the AIS. It does say what the Picken County's portion is.
Yeah. Well, I don't see that it's very different from the one online, so I don't have any problems with that.
Do we project out for year end? So our year end was 40 million for the total in 2022. Do we project out what we think the year end will be for 2023 or no?
Not for this process. We do that as part of the budget process. So we did have projections in the budget presentation with what we were projecting sales tax to be, and then that's what we build the 2024 budget on.
And remind me again, even though we looked at this just yesterday, 25% of the overall revenues are generated by sales tax for
Approximately.
Picken County's budget.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody in the public who would like to discuss
This
this?
is not a public hearing.
It's not.
This is first reading.
First reading.
It's
first
not a
reading.
public hearing.
I will make a
Don't
motion.
talk.
I will make a motion to approve on first reading and set for second reading and public hearing on October 25th.
I'll second.
Any other discussion?
No.
All those in favor, say, please say aye.
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 Thanks, Liz.
Thank you.
Nice
Thanks,
to see
Liz.
you again.
I know, you're gonna see a lot of me this month.
Okay, the next one is an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners authorizing and approving the amended trail easement agreement between the Board of County Commissioners and WJ Ranch Holdings LLC, and Paul's going to talk to us about this.
Hi, Paul.
Yes. Hi. I'm going to try and bring up a map here for us all to look at. All right. Okay. So, what I have in front of you is a trail easement amendment. And just to go back, I'm Paul Holsinger. I'm the Agriculture and Conservation Easement Administrator or Manager for Open Space and Trails. We originally acquired a trail easement from Emma Farms. It's since changed hands, which is why this is called the WJ Trail Easement Amendment. But back in 2015, we purchased a conservation easement on the property, as well as this trail easement that you see in yellow. It is right on the Eagle-Picken County line, which is this black line. And according to our management plan for Glacier Open Space is this right off of the map here. 2020, we approved the connection from Glacier to Nancy's Path. Nancy's Path is this yellow line down here. Once the trail crew got in there, we found some better alignment options, one that would require less cutting of oaks and less disturbance, and it was a better place to cross the home supply ditch, which we had to get over. Home Supply Ditch Company was in favor of this plan. It was better for all of our users. It utilized an existing ranch road. The biggest place here where we've strayed off of the original trail easement is up here on the north section. Before, it was cutting through an oak grove and kind of going through a dip. Now this is on the existing ranch road that everybody accesses to maintain their head gates. So we're going to share that access. It'll just work a lot better. And I can entertain any questions you have.
So everything else is about the same, just that one little job.
About the same, yep. And we're taking this opportunity, the trail easement from, it's kind of hard to see my cursor there, but from there south was within, for the most part, the easement. Now we're just moving the center line on the as-built, which it is 7.5 feet on either side. So it's a 15-foot easement. So.
And it's just equestrian and pedestrian?
Equestrian and pedestrian only, because Nancy's Path is only pedestrian and equestrian. So this will not be part of the mountain bike system, but it will be accessible by foot and horseback.
And no dogs.
No dogs.
All right. Any
And the
questions?
owners are fine with those? They don't have
Yes,
any
they are.
objections?
They are actually, they live out of state, so we've been trying to get this done for a while. It is for sale, so we're trying to jump on this as quickly as we can. So.
Yeah, Steve?
This summer I was up there with Paul, and we were actually looking at the head gate up for the Glacier open space land and the new center pivot that they had put in there. And Paul pointed out that he thought this would be a better alignment, switching the trail right there. And I don't think you had figured it all out yet at that point, but the idea was percolating in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think from what I had seen that day, the very beginning of it by the head gate, it totally made sense to switch it.
Yeah, and we are going to take the opportunity to incorporate the crossing into some better measurement devices on the ditch and better takeoffs for our system as well.
Then there was also the place where the debris flow comes down into the ditch. Are you going to be able to fix that at the same time?
Yep, we're going to pipe all the way beyond that debris flow, so if there is a weather event, it's not going to cause any blowouts of that ditch. So we're trying to work with everybody on that system and make it work for the ranchers, make it work for the users, and for our irrigation system as well.
Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? I'll look for a motion to approve.
So I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance on first reading, authorizing and approving the amended trail easement between the BOCC and WJWJ Ranch Holdings, with a second hearing set for October 25th.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Next is the resolution of the Board of Commissioners.
Your mic, isn't it?
Next is the resolution of the Board of Commissioners approving the acceptance of an electric vehicle grant awarded from the state of Colorado. And Matt is here.
Howdy, everybody. Matt Bergström, I'm the fleet manager, here today to get your blessing to accept a $198,000 grant we received from the Fleet Zero Charging. So
How do we not say yes to this? I don't know.
Well, so next year we're budgeting about $780,000 to continue our infrastructure. So this will help cover some of those costs. So little precursor to what's happening.
It will reduce that
It'll
cost?
reduce it. Yep.
So that request in the budget is not in addition to this, it'll be less.
We budget for the full amount of $780,000, and then
And we
this
get
will
to
drop it
subtract this.
roughly
Great.
200,000.
Okay, sounds good.
I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to thank you and staff for applying for this grid and actually receiving. This is significant and something if we're looking at upping our electric vehicle into our fleet percentages of vehicles, we definitely need to have chargers. And I think it's my understanding there's holes in the ground right now at the airport and at Public Works
Two big ones.
to get this systems up and running. And so I want to thank you. Thank you for your efforts, and we really appreciate it. And would like to make a motion to approve on first reading, except for second reading, public hearing on October the 25th.
Second.
I have a question for you. The one in Aspen, that has the Aspen address, where is that?
We haven't quite figured that out yet. I was hoping to kind of place it in between the sheriff's building right by facilities there. Maybe we can pull that dead Aspen out, put some parking lot in there, and we'd share it with the city of Aspen.
Somewhere
just
on the campus right here.
Somewhere, yeah. We just got the grant, so we haven't even got to that stage yet. I'm trying to get like the first phase in at the airport and Public Works, and then we'll work
Okay.
on this next phase here as soon
Great.
as those are powered up.
Can
Okay, thanks,
I
Matt.
add to that? And please keep in mind that we may be redoing that space in the very near future. So we need to make sure we're not going to be putting it in, digging it up. So
Yeah.
I know you guys are aware of that, but just
That
so.
was a very optimistic statement in the very near future. Steve?
I'm trying to be optimistic today, please.
Yeah, and as I understand it, there's like at least two different kinds of chargers, one for the Teslas and one for everybody else, but maybe there's more kinds of chargers for different kinds of cars.
Yeah, so there's like two standard adapters or two charging cables that most people use. They're starting to standardize that a little bit more. So even if anything wouldn't work with like the Teslas, like there's adapters in place. Like we have a lot of people using our chargers now that just they buy a little adapter, they plug in, and then it adapts to their car. Everything we're purchasing will work with what we have.
1 and 2, levels 1 and 2, or?
2 and 3.
2 and 3.
Yeah, so we're doing some very high capacity level 3 chargers at the airport in the future. Maybe we'll have some heavy equipment or, move their whole fleet over at some point eventually, but we're just waiting on the product to be available. So the thought was have the infrastructure in the ground first and then start acquiring the cars a little bit after.
Thank you.
So we have 7 hopefully budgeted for next year as well.
Well, we're talking about that.
Yeah.
Any more questions or comments?
Nope.
Okay, then we'll look to vote. All those in favor of this resolution, please say aye.
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 Thanks,
Aye.
thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Passes 4-0. Thank you, Matt. Now we have an ordinance of the Board of Commissioners amending ordinance number 016-21215, 2015, and the Pickens County Election Commission bylaws. And Charlotte is,
We're moving too fast for Charlotte.
You want me to run up?
I actually have a change I want to request in this, so.
what do you want to?
Me too. I wonder if it's the same one.
I'm staying out of it. So when's that snow coming?
In due time.
Steve, you always have an answer. And I'm not
I
quite
hope-
sure what that means. 1 o'clock is supposed to be raining.
In terms of ranch work, about the middle of December is a good time for the snow to arrive.
Tonight at midnight, 50% chance.
I went up Watson Divide yesterday and went home that way past John's house. From the top of Watson Divide, I had to stop. There were no cars anywhere. Oh, my word, that is just unbelievably beautiful right now. All the peaks
Color?
are snowy and the colors everywhere, but the grass is all still green. It was breathtaking. It was really
What a
great.
nice way home.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's only 10 minutes longer.
It's worth it.
I didn't see a single car after Watson Divide all the way to my house.
Don't tell anybody.
Nobody wants to drive it. There's too much corduroy.
That's how I felt going over to Rifle Reservoir, going the back way. It was gorgeous. And I didn't even know some of those places existed over there. It was beautiful. And all the livestock and the green grass, they're doing another crop, so they have another mowing coming up.
Sorry,
we're
Charlotte,
moving
we're on a
along.
fast track. We caught you by surprise.
Okay. So I'm just bringing an ordinance, first reading for an amendment to the Election Commission bylaws. In your packet, you have the changes in the bylaws in red. And the election board just had a meeting, and the chair is moving out of county. So they asked for an amendment to the bylaws to include members to be from Pitkin, Eagle, and or Garfield County.
And who is that again?
Brooke Peterson.
And did you have a question about that, Steve?
Yeah, on the part that's being proposed to change, which if you look on page 34 of the packet, where it adds either Pitkin, Eagle, and or Garfield County. Number one, I want to make sure that there is nothing in the state law or something that specifies that an election commissioner should come reside in the county where they're the election commissioner for.
There is not.
There is not. Okay, then what I would propose, instead of making it Pitkin, Eagle, and or Garfield County, I would add the sentence, and resides within the Roaring Fork watershed. So that would preclude someone who lives beyond Glenwood Springs in somewhere in Garfield County, or someone up towards Gypsum or Eagle, who really has they don't have the connection to Pitkin County that those who live in the Roaring Fork Valley do. So I think if we would make that addition, that they need to reside in the Roaring Fork Valley watershed, that I'd be happy with it.
Kelly?
I'm gonna take a different tact. I actually think that we should have broader discussion about this, perhaps in a work session. I honestly can't remember the last time I revisited these bylaws. I am very uncomfortable with outsourcing the accountability of Pitkin County's elections to people who are not electors in Pitkin County. And, you know, I think that there is a lot of opportunity for us to really discuss strengthening these bylaws. You know, I would be more inclined to put more detail to what our appointees' qualifications are, and you know, whether we want to identify a board that has any political party representation or is fully unaffiliated, or you know, things that are not currently called out here. I get that, you know, that we're having a difficult time recruiting for boards, but maybe we should figure out how to work harder there. Like, I should figure out as a BOCC member on how to work harder to recruit people to this important board. But I don't want to relax the responsibilities of the work of this board, you know, to attain that. You know, I noticed that, you know, we don't make any reference to sort of their duties to uphold the rules and laws of state and federal elections. You know, we don't kind of call out what happens in an instance of if a board should vote to violate any of those rules and laws of an election. You know, there doesn't seem to be any call-up provision to this board or standards that we might relate to if we wanted to rescind the appointment of an election commissioner. You know, I just think there's a lot of opportunity to talk about some really important things that thankfully Pitkin County has been free of having to deal with head on in the political dynamic and discourse related to free and fair elections. But I think it would be foolish of us to assume that that may never be coming. And I think we have an opportunity to, make really strong standards here. So that would be my request of you all.
Patty?
Yeah, I support what Kelly is saying. Not with this particular appointee who is moving out of the county. We've known that appointee for many, many, many years. And I'm not concerned about that specific, but we don't know what might be coming down the pike. We didn't bring Gunnison County in, and they're right there with us too. So I agree. I think we should have a deeper dive into I know that the election board was looking at, advisory board is looking at, keeping this person involved, but I think we need, there's something, too bad we can't do something in the interim, but I think we need to really look at the points Kelly's bringing up and have some clarity to protect both the appointees and to protect the Board of Commissioners and to protect the voters and the process within Pickens County, because Pickens County does such an amazing job with our election process. We want to make sure that we keep it in that vein.
So what are you recommending about the current?
I'm recommending we hold off
On
until we have a chance to revise and revisit the whole document itself.
So this person will be living outside the county and serving on the commission? Is that what you're recommending?
You would not be allowed to.
Yeah, under the current bylaws, he
Yeah.
would not be allowed to serve on the committee or in the commission, and so he would necessarily come off of that when his residency changes. I think what is being suggested is tabling this for further discussion. That may be after budget season. At this point, we're having a hard time finding time. But that would basically be no changes to the bylaws, and we'd continue to try and recruit within the county, which I think is roughly what's being asked for right now.
And then will we
least.
have enough people on the board to get through this next election in 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
I believe that we had an applicant yesterday who I'm trying to follow up with to see if we can interview that person. And then we have 3 other members besides Brooke,
So we'd have 4 out of 5.
yes.
Can I ask real quick, though, to continue? There's no way we can do an interim, keep this applicant, this appointee on the board until we've resolved this issue?
Well, from my point of view,
From your legal
this
point of
particular
view,
realm, everything's interim until you change it. So if you want to change it and then change it again, you're free to do so.
so I'm looking at Miss McNicholas Curry over there.
I guess I'm just, I'm always a little uncomfortable sort of changing rules to accommodate a single person. I don't think that the board is hamstrung from duties related to the 2023 coordinated election if these remain the same.
If we only have 4 members, assuming we approve the next applicant.
And we could
'Cause
always
we'll only have
reapp-
3
Yeah.
until we approve a new one.
And we could always reappoint if it worked out, the same person, if we were to change this in the future. And I don't know where that'll go.
What?
And I would,
If we were to change this in the future, we wouldn't be able to reappoint.
no. If we were to change it to allow somebody not to live in Pickens County and this person wanted to reapply, we could
Oh,
appoint
I see
them.
what you're saying, okay.
But in the interim, no, that he would have to step down if he changed his residency by the way the bylaws are written now.
Correct.
And I don't think tabling it is the right way to go because we don't have a date certain, we don't know. I think we should just withdraw until such time as we do a complete reevaluation of the bylaws. Might as well clean it up all at one time.
Steve?
So, in deference to Kelly, who was our former election official in Pickens County and knows the operations of our whole system way better than any of us, your argument is good, and I respect that. and I think we should take a deeper dive. When you said you didn't want to have people in other counties even involved in it, I got this picture in my mind of people from other counties could try to have a concerted effort to get some people appointed to our election commission.
The
and
way
try
this
to
is
somehow-
presented, there could be 5 people who don't even live in Picken County.
Yeah,
that
so we
sit
need
on
to
the
take a
commission.
closer look at the bylaws and the exact wording, and there are some other changes that I think would be appropriate to look at or consider anyhow in a deeper dive. So
Okay,
I'm
so.
trying to think how we could just vote against this might be
That's
the
what I was
best thing to do, and
Makes
not try to postpone it indefinitely or something else. Then if we just don't pass it today, then we can do the deeper dive and then bring back proposed bylaws changes at another future date.
I agree, that's what I was thinking as well.
I could
Thank
put a-
you for Kelly for those thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly, great point. So I'll put a motion out to deny the recommendation to amend the bylaws of the Election Advisory Board.
I'll second the motion.
What was your motion?
To deny.
Okay. I was thinking we would just make a motion to approve and we would all vote no. Can we change it and make it a deny motion?
Nancy, however you want to get
No,
there
I'm just
again.
wondering what's the best way to do it.
You, the directest way is always the best, right? So, motion not to accept, or a motion to deny,
Okay,
or a
great,
motion
thank
to
you.
refuse, all of that works.
Okay, great.
I can
All right,
add
so we
those
have
words.
a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thanks, Charlotte.
I will work with Ingrid.
And
Okay.
I will commit to bringing forward some kind of best practices and stuff for us to contemplate in this discussion.
Thanks, Kelly.
And I know you're gonna love going out and recruiting more people for this.
She just takes the calls when they come in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Thank you, Charlotte. Okay, now we have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners amending Resolution Number 007-2019 and approving an amendment to the interorganizational agreement between the BOCC,
Got it.
Aspen Valley Hospital District, Mountain Family Health Center, and Eagle County. Hi, Jordana.
Hi, Francie. Good afternoon, everybody. So exactly, today I'm bringing forward a resolution to consider the approval of an amendment to this IOA, Inter-Organizational Agreement, between the parties stated, Aspen Valley Hospital, Eagle County, Mountain Family Health Center, and Picken County. The first interorganizational agreement was entered into in January of 2019. What this agreement allows us to do is ensuring high-quality integrated primary medical care, behavioral health care, and dental services are provided at Mountain Family Health Center in Basalt. What we're talking about today is updating the funding formula of how we provide support to Mountain Family to provide these services. Currently, the funding formula is fairly complicated and doesn't account for incentivizing quality. So what this would do would be able to simplify the funding formula process and incentivize quality care. So this formula has been reached through consensus with all of the partners involved, and we're just bringing it back to all of the boards to assure that we can move forward in this direction.
Okay. Any questions for Jordana?
Nope.
No, though, I
think
will
it's a good
note,
idea.
we haven't really had an update on Mountain Family Health recently, which sometimes no news is good news, but if there's an opportunity to find out how the clinic is doing, that would be great.
Sounds like in the new year, after budget season, we can come back.
Yeah, they're in the process of hiring a new executive director, so it might be a good time as that person comes on to do an introduction and have an update on
After the
on
budget
that
season.
partnership. Yeah.
Okay, well, then I'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve let's see, which one we on?
Number 6.
The resolution of the board amending resolution number 007-2019 and approving an amendment to the interorganizational agreement between the BOCC, Aspen Valley Hospital District, Mountain Family Health Center, and Eagle County,
Which will go to public hearing on October
25th.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Thank you, Jordana.
See you October 25th.
Okay, and now we have another one. Do you have the name of the next one that they
Something like
brought us?
The hot off the press.
Would you provide that name, please?
I would love to. The name, and can I hand these around? Is an ordinance. Board of County Commissioners, Pitkin County, accepting an encroachment license from the Roaring Fork Transit Agency for the purpose of constructing the Aspen Village Jerbozdale pedestrian bridge.
Thank you.
Great, proceed.
And you saw essentially the same project in June on your approval of an ordinance accepting a similar license from the BLM. And just to review a little bit, this is a project that was first approved in our our Rio Grande Trail Management Plan in 2015 with the goal of connecting the folks that live in the Aspen Village subdivision to the Rio Grande Trail. You might recall some years before that we built a bridge from the Lazy Glen Trailer Park to the Rio Grande Trail. And this is a similar situation where you have what we might call an underserved community, people that presently, if they want to get from their trailer park over to the Rio Grande Trail, they do have an underpass under the highway, which is great at Jerbozdale, but then they have to ride down Jerboz Way and cross the bridge and go up past where the rail cars are, poor sight lines, no shoulders, and so forth. And consequently, our 2015 plan proposed to connect that community to the trail with a safe route from that underpass to the trail. And where it is, it's just past Jerboz Way, going downstream. CDOT owns land all the way up to the BLM's land, which then connects over to the RAFTA right-of-way, and we can build a bridge a trail on the CDOT land to connect from the trail adjacent to the highway down to the river, fly over the river with a bridge, and the actual footers of the bridge are landing partially within the RAFTA right-of-way, which of course Pitkin County helped fund through our purchase of a trail easement back in the day when that Rio Grande right-of-way was up in the air. But we have been working in Rye in particular with the attorneys that represent RAFTA and have come up with language that they like to go into an encroachment license that would allow us to land this bridge partly in their right-of-way and then connect that with a small trail so that the folks at Aspen, I keep missing this name, Aspen Village subdivision, can get themselves over to the Rio Grande Trail and go up or down the valley safely. And so we've been wanting to do this for some time. We are just about to go to ComDev for the necessary permits on the land use side. SGM has designed a beautiful trail and a bridge, and we'd like to get out to bid with that. So we recommend that you approve this on first reading and schedule for second reading at your next meeting.
I have a question for you. When we first discussed this, I believe it was earlier this year. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Earlier this year, when we first approved this, I remember seeing 3 different proposals for where the bridge was going to go. But is it not possible to put an extension on the current bridge rather than a whole new bridge across the river?
We looked at that, and I'll give you my best answer. Jesse Young, who actually went through a lot of those alternative analysis, could be here at second reading if we want to get into this further. But one of the issues was that that would require just widening Jerboz Way to put a larger edge on the roadway, but people would still be on the roadway. And going down to that bridge, I think is the lower Woody Creek Bridge, and then back up again, you're still dealing with kind of a difficult road platform for pedestrians, with people coming in and out of there in their cars. So the decision was made to avoid that road platform altogether and put this bridge in. The budget was approved, and the license with BLM was approved previously. So.
Yeah, it's a little hard to imagine that somebody's going to ride their bike from Aspen Village to Basalt or Aspen, but can't handle the down and the up. It seems contradictory to the idea of riding a bike. But I'm not going to get in the way of this. I know we already approved it, but just saying it bothers me. Patty?
Well, you know, I've been working on this for 20 years. And for Dolores Stutzman, and we were hoping to get it done before she passed away, but so now we're going to get it done for her. And we're also looking at combining this at some point with an Eagle Scout project to put up some kind of a plaque or something there, which is making the Stutzman-Jerboz family very happy. So I would love to see this move forward. We're getting closer all the time. And Francie, yeah, I understand your concerns, but when you have moms and babies and stroller, I mean, and, you know, whatever those.
Burley trailers.
Thank you, yeah. You know, trying to get up and down, and it's another speed issue with people coming down and over that bridge. And there's that parking area for fly fishermen that pull in and out of there. So this is really the best interest of public safety. So I'm just excited. We're hoping to get construction started in 2024 and get her done. So
Remind me
thank
how
you.
many people live at Aspen Village?
There's 100 and something units there.
I don't know.
You
It's
don't
a
Yeah.
it's
Mick,
Steve?
100
I'm
something.
fully in favor of doing
151 units there.
a separate bridge like we approved before for the families to be able to get to Rio Grande Trail. Right now, they can get along the highway. They're separated from the highway. They can go through the underpass. If they can go over the bridge and get on Rio Grande Trail, they're separated from automobile traffic the entire way to the Rio Grande Trail, which is the safest way for any bicycle, but especially families with kids going on there. I also believe it would probably be an ADA accessible kind of a thing, whereas going down that windy, narrow road where cars are going too fast through there normally is just not safe for anybody on foot or on a bicycle. So I do have a question about the train. I don't think there will ever be a train built on there again. But if we're building this bridge for X amount of hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever it will cost,
More than that.
or millions, I'm not sure, and it's partly on the Rio Grande right-of-way, and then in the future, if a train actually were rebuilt on that alignment, is that gonna mean we'd have to remove the bridge?
Right. That's a great question, and I'm kind of glad you brought that up, because in the ordinance itself, we acknowledge that this is a rail-banked piece of property, meaning that it has to be kept in a condition that's viable for the rail to be put back in place. We have a similar issue with the Rio Grande Trail overall, where we pulled up the rails and pulled the ties, and we've built bridges and this and that. And the thought has always been, in my understanding, that the cost of putting a rail back in there is such that the cost of modifying whatever trail improvements are in the corridor would be a relatively small line item in the overall budget for putting the rail back in. But certainly, if for any reason the improvements that we're talking about today would need to be modified, hopefully not entirely eliminated, but in any event, if the rail is going to come back, that we would have to work with RAFTA to relocate those things.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'll look for a motion.
I would be more than happy to put forward a motion to approve on first reading the accepting an encroachment east license from Roaring Fork Transit Agency for the purpose of constructing the Aspen Village Deer Bus pedestrian bridge. And it's for second reading, public hearing on October 25th.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Thank
Aye.
you. Thanks, Dale.
Aye.
And tell Jesse we said thanks.
Thank you.
Okay,
Did you vote in favor, Francie?
I said a reluctant aye.
Okay.
I was defeated last time around, so
Sotto
I'm not going to
voce.
be a pest. Okay, now we're moving on to individual consideration items. This is a public hearing, it's one reading. It's the Board of County Commissioners sitting as the Board of Equalization. And the ratification of hearing officers' determinations of appeals of the Pickens County Assessor's valuation. Do I have to reconvene us as the Board of Equalization?
Just call it to order.
I call it to order, the Board of Equalization.
Okay.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you for having us. Jeanette Jones from the manager's office, and joining me at the table today is Mick Ireland and Sam Engen, your clerk to the board. And in the audience, I believe virtually we have a few of our hearing officers, and joining us in the audience is Deb, our county assessor. I'm going to call you all by first names. Wendy and Taylor and Cheryl in the back on the right, and Nanita. Am I missing anybody? Who have spent many, many hours, not just this summer from May, but many, many hours reviewing all the valuations in Pickens County, and then starting this whole BOE, their appraisal or assessor determination process, and going through all the appeals. And that was even prior to BOE, and then many, many exhausting hours to the BOE. So I'm sure they all want to be acknowledged for all of that. I believe we may have a couple of hearing officers joining us virtually. I would like to acknowledge our hearing officers for this season, and that was Mick Ireland right here next to me, Liz Newman, Ryan Kane, Mark Bergman, and Kim Tarver, who also heard appeals from July 7th through September 15th, and that wasn't the end of it. Then they had to prepare all their determinations, and spent many exhausting hours on that too. So everybody strived very, very hard to give all our taxpayers in the county their due process, and this is where we are today. And there's some more information in my memo for you all that I think you've probably read, but Mick has his presentation, which pretty much mirrors the memo, so I'm going to turn it over to him and let him do that for you.
All right. I want to start actually with the thank yous that are at the end of your PowerPoint that's included, and I think that's important. So I'll page down. How do I switch my share screen? This is Zoom. Do I need to stop sharing?
Yeah.
Where's my share stop?
Because
Okay, there we go. Then we can share. Right there.
This one.
Yeah, all right. So, I used to work here in that side of the desk, and we there was a time when the 5 commissioners would meet, Steve might remember this, and decide each property tax appeal. That would have been 1,000 hours of extra work for 5 people. That would be 5,000 hours of work to do what the hearing officers and appraisers did. So I want to start by thanking the elected assessor, Deb Bainsberger, for choosing such excellent appraisers. We have very talented appraisers, certified people who worked very hard on this and had a lot of patience with me, the hearing officers, and the taxpayers. And one of the things that most of us do most of the time, if we have a chance in a hearing, is to explain to the taxpayer that the purpose of the hearing is to give them a chance to tell the appraisers things that the appraisers can't know about your property. And that's important because, as the joke we have with Taylor is, appraisers are not Santa Claus. They can't visit all the 20,000 properties overnight, eat all the cookies, and then go back to work. They just don't have firsthand knowledge of everything, and we encourage people to come in and tell us about your property because there are things that don't show up in the database. You maybe have a cracked foundation, or a neighbor has a right to use your driveway or your basement, who knows, or your views are obstructed in a way that didn't previously show in the records. The clerks, Jeanette, Sam, and Julia, yes, Julia Ely, the clerks to the BOCC are the people who put together all the information that flows in from hearing officers and appraisers and generates what turned out to be determinations for 1,600 different people who filed actual appeals. In the beginning, there were 4,000. A lot of them were settled by going in and talking to the appraiser and saying, oh, you didn't realize this or that or the other thing, and the appraisers may reach an agreement and then you're done. But a lot of people went to the hearing process. About 40% of the, 1,600 people did go, and about 40% of them had actual hearings, which are 20-minute presentations, and they are very action-packed. Most of the time, as a hearing officer, I have to read the material before because people are just going to be shooting. It's 4% cap rate, and and it's been 80 years I've had the property, and I still have the orange and black shag carpeting in the living room, and all the material is coming at you very quickly, so you want to know in advance sort of what's going on. The appraisers, I think most of them are here today. Ryan Gentry, Wendy Schultz, Dan Popish, Anita DeSales, Cheryl Hasselbring, and Taylor Melinek. I hope I didn't leave anybody out. And of course, Larry Feit, who was the former chief appraiser and actually the guiding spirit in this. He's the person you go to ask difficult questions. This, as you'll see up here, this is our spirit animal after we finish this process. And I think that little whale could speak for all of us. There are only 800,000 whales in the ocean now. There were once 2 million, but there are 800,000, and we feel, all of us, the joy that this whale is feeling and just being done. Although there's a little handful of things that still need to be done, but we're done. So one of the things I want to do, usually I just do a very short presentation on this, but I know as commissioners you're going to get a lot of questions. You may get them at this meeting, you may get them outside of it, so it's helpful to understand a bit of how the process works. This is an old joke, and I got it online, but people feel this way. It's hard for me to work without 2 screens and a laptop, and this is how the lender sees your home. So going down, this thing flips really quickly, and I'm sorry about this. Maybe somebody can tell me. Shoot.
Can we close that box on the right, the alt?
Oh, I can close that little box down there? Good. This one? Yeah.
I think this box.
Oh, okay, on the left, or you're right, or whatever. Anyway, why are the values up so much? You're not alone as a county. COVID-19 has something to do with it. People found, because COVID made us all find ways to work from home, that they could work from home and they could work from their Aspen home, which tends to be expensive, but it's feasible now with all the Zoom and Google Meet and other people being able to do that. You have a lot more wealth among potential buyers. There are, contrary to what the paper wrote, there are actually 3,115 billionaires in the world, and the number grows every day. And real estate is a great investment vehicle for many of them, as you may know from the Lift 1A project that was purchased by someone who is not a billionaire or oligarch, but they're a plutocrat or something. But there are a lot of those people. There are like 60 supposedly billionaires here. You don't even really know for sure because a lot of it's masked by LLCs. We have a higher per capita number of billionaires in even places like Kuwait and Qatar and all those famous little emirates. The STR has added a lot of value to property, and I want to explain that. Even though you don't have an STR, to a potential buyer, the potential of having an STR is an important incentive. And so you may not have one, but people look at your property and they're interested in buying it, and they say, well, I could, the house is worth a mere 12 million, but with an STR it would be 14. So that sort of works its way into the database, and of course people are not happy about that because they don't have one, but the potential to have one, just like the potential, say, to build 15,000 square feet adds value to the property.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes. Yes, you may.
Could you help me understand that a little better? Because I did notice in some of the protests that owners were saying because they didn't have an STR permit or were in the queue to get an STR permit, that they were arguing their values. So just help me understand how that was handled.
The fundamental rule for valuation, as the appraisers can tell you, is what would somebody pay in an arm's length transaction between a willing buyer and a willing seller. So if a buyer perceives that your property has that potential, even though you haven't exercised it, just like if the buyer sees that you have TDRs that can be severed and sold, or the buyer perceives you have a right to build an extra large house, that influences the value of your property, even though you may not be exercising that right. You're not building a larger house, for example. You're not severing TDRs, and you don't have an STR at present. But buyers, the market looks at that not as what you have or what you do, but what you have the ability to do that could make that buyer as an investor more money. So that's kind of a crucial thing. We even had a case where somebody came in and said, well, I live on this property and they have stables and barns and riding rings for horses, and I don't even own a horse. But that buyer, that seller, is in competition with people who might have one, and they perceive the value of that property to be enhanced by these stables, even though the present resident isn't using them. So what happens, and we can go into detail on this, but I won't too much. Colorado law is pretty clear. You have to time trend property sales for the properties to which yours is compared for an inflationary measure that they establish, the county establishes, the assessor's office establishes by drawing a sample, in this case, 366 Aspen, Down Valley, Brush Creek, properties, Snowmass, everybody. There were 366 drawn, and the assessor's office compares those sales, those were properties sold in the 18 months before the valuation date, to what they were previously valued at. So you have a sale, and they say, on the average, and I could give you lots of statistics in case you missed your linear regression class when you were younger, but that really came up with 4% per month was what property was appreciating at. Now, that doesn't mean your property is going to be valued at 4% per month since the last valuation, because you, as a property tax payer and owner, get to come in and tell the assessor, the appraisers, and myself at a hearing that their property is not similar to, and we'll get to that in a second, not similar to the properties to which it is being compared. Okay? So the state comes in, and they took about 160 properties, and they went through their little regression festival here. So the assessor had 160, and they came up with this slope. However, you can see how the dots are not directly on the line. They're only directly on the line when people are making up data. You know, that was what they did in the 70s to say, well, black kids and IQs and twin studies and all that stuff, they made up the data literally. In this case, you've always got to expect fluctuations. Somebody will overpay or underpay depending on how good of a bargainer they are. So, or how they're motivated. They may want the property for an emotional reason, which they'll pay a little extra. Or they may not, the owner may want to get rid of it because they're sick of the cold. So that happens. That is what's going on. You see in the background there in that little slide, you see some of the sales properties that were qualified for looking at appreciation.
So can I ask a question
Yeah,
about
of
that
course.
slope? So is that, I just am trying to think about how we think about that in terms of like quality of a property. Like is that sort of the upper level, or is that like if you have an excellent property versus a fair property,
Okay,
is the slope in the
let-
middle?
To give you a brief overview of what the appraisers over here spend 10,000 hours getting certified to say, but what happens is they don't look at your property and tack on 4%. What they do look at, and they are required by the statute, by actually starting with Article 10 of the Constitution, the so-called Tabor Amendment of 1992, they are required to compare your property to actual sales of other properties that are comparable. And a lot of times it might be right in the neighborhood. So that property, if it's sold 6 months before the valuation date, which is June 30th, 2022, then they're going to add about 6 months of appreciation, so about 25% to that value. So you had a sale at $5 million, 25% more is going to be $6.5 million. No, it's going to be $6.25 million. So they'll say, well, your property's just like that house, and its value on valuation date is 6.25. Now, you have the opportunity, and the point of the hearings is to come in and say, no, I'm not really like that house, because that house has a new remodel and hot tubs and a wine cellar and all these things. Mine does not. And the appraisers take that into account, and ultimately the hearing officer has to settle it. So we look at individual circumstances. Who's to know? But somebody comes in and says, look, my neighbor has a right to go through my backyard. He has an easement you don't know about. That would change the value of your property. Or, and again, Taylor, he has or she has ski in, ski out access, and I don't. That's a big ticket item. So if that property has it and you don't, then they make a downward adjustment to account for that, the fact that they have something you don't, before they compare you to that property. And I have a little slide on this that'll be coming
When
up.
does the 4% become
Okay,
a tool?
the 4% is a tool in valuing the properties to which you are compared. So the state constitution says your value has to be determined by comparison strictly of, in residential cases, of market sales. So you're being, A is being compared to B, but B, the thing it's being compared to, has to be time adjusted to make it worth what it was on June 30th, 2022. So if it's inflation, it's 4%, double the value of that property, you're not comparing it to $5 million it sold for, but $10 million it was worth by the time comparisons start, June 30th. So they're all on the same date. That's the idea. And I have a little detail on that coming up that might help you. But if that doesn't, I'm happy to.
No, that makes more sense to
Makes
me.
more sense. Okay.
I have a question before you change the slide. So the data that's behind this little inset there,
The yellow, yeah.
that is like the previous assessment or evaluation compared to the current one?
Yeah, these are.
The little blue things, but the actual data.
Yeah, those are actual sales. Okay.
Oh, those are actual sales.
Yeah. So that's part of the set of 360. So there are about 160 just in the Aspen area. They're like 52 in Snowmass, and down valley there's 48. There's subsets of that. So each little neighborhood might have a little different appreciation, but not much. It turned out this time, unlike in past evaluations that I was part of, a lot of times Aspen goes way up, but Down Valley or Brush Creek or Snowmass doesn't move. This time they kind of all move together. And that's because the driving forces are sort of very broad national and statewide strokes having to do with, well, we have tax cuts and we have dividend payouts and STRs and COVID movers, and all those things are operating everywhere in the state. Now, Deb, the assessor, cannot say, well, I feel that 4% is too much, it's just in my gut. Or, as happened once here, locals can't afford that, so we'll give a break for being local. You're a local owner, so we'll use 2% for your comparisons. She can't do that. If she did, the state would come in, audit your results, reset your values, and bill you for the effort. And that happened here long ago, before Tommy Isaac. But the state did come in and revalue all the property and sent you a bill, and you had to pay it. It's happened in Garfield County. It happens now and then that people they just feel that this is too much of a burden. And what Deb and the appraisers and hearing officers tried to emphasize to people coming before us is the assessor, the appraisers, we don't control taxes. We don't set your tax rate. This elected board does, and 50 other elected boards do. And you have, for most of us, school district is the biggest, and then you might have open space, and then you might have a water district, a sand district, or a fire district. You can talk to them directly is what we encourage people to call them up and say, which CMC has already done and you're working on, is lower the mill levy or give us some kind of relief from the windfall of these increases. You had on December 31st, $8 billion worth of property in the county. Now it's $20 billion. 14 billion. And so it went up by 6 billion. And I'll get down to that. We have a little description of it. So the notice, it starts with this notice proposition. You get something in the mail. It has to be by snail mail. And it says, we've determined your property is worth $62 million. So you have a right to have a hearing, and you can come in and talk to the appraisers and tell us why it's not. So this is, I wish I could get rid of that little thing, but I can't. This is what the appraisers see every day, and I've seen hundreds of them, thousands of them. Shoot. This is so...
Love the name of those properties, by the way.
Working hard late at night.
Go unnoticed.
So you have a hearing, and the appraisers will come in and say, look, here's what we compared you to. you have this place on Boardwalk, and we considered it to Batman's place and Mar-a-Lago and Pennsylvania Avenue. And you see now up here, there was a sale price, $5,300,000, $6,049,000, and $5.2 million right there. And then you see TAJSP, time adjusted sale price. So that's the inflation. This particular property here, Greystone Castle, is sold for $5.3 million on 5/18/2021, and adjusting for inflation, it would have sold, using the model, for $9,048,000 on June 30th, 2022. But that's not the end of the story. Each of these properties are the things that you're being compared to, because not every property is directly comparison. Very few are clones of each other. Dang. So they make adjustments. Now you can see where I've got that big circle here. You can see where it says living area, and there's a yellow 4476. Well, they're comparing it to Greystone Castle, which is only 3564 in size. So a living area adjustment is made upward, and that brings the value of the compared property being compared to upward because it's smaller. All right? And then you see up here, it's 1997 actual year, and then 1995. A newer property's in better condition. People will pay more for the identical property that isn't going to need repair very soon. So there's an example, and so the appraiser comes in and she says, this one adjusts out at $9 million, this one at $10 million, and this one at 6.9. You can see that there. And then they suggest a value for your property, and in this case it was $8.4 million, which isn't exactly the average there because they took into account, sometimes they get to take into account things that aren't right here on the chart, like the ski access or the views and things like that. So that's the heart of the process. And the petitioners, who we really do appreciate, will come in with more information that the appraiser doesn't have. The appraiser knows how big it is, how old it is, where it is, when it was constructed. But the appraiser does not know is that it's still equipped with black and red shag carpeting from the 70s and genuine Formica kitchens. And so when the appraiser hears that, or the hearing officer hears that, and we usually take people's word for it. Nobody makes this stuff up. I mean, nobody comes in with pictures of Formica countertops, that are forged. And so you make a downward adjustment in your final determination of their property. Now, Steve Child, the commissioner, asked the system, and they asked me, well, what was the net result of that? It was, let me get down to that. Oops, sorry. I've got to stop sharing and give you a different share, which is responsive to Steve's concerns. Let's see, Steve, here we go. We're bringing the average math education in the county up by about 3 points today, just based on all the stuff you're seeing. Steve asked what the net result of the process was. Well, you see here this little table.
No,
We're not.
I got to share the screen. Now, see, it doesn't show the share screen box. Where? Go.
I think you have a mouse there that you can use if that's.
Oh, I do have a mouse. Thank God.
That would be easier.
Yeah, that will help a lot.
Thank God.
All right.
I was like, in my mind, I'm like, get that.
Okay,
damn
so
mouse.
Steve said, well, what happened? Well, you see here that 654 properties right here where I'm pointing got a downward adjustment. The appraisers and the hearing officers never adjust you upwards. It's heads
I
you
have a
break
question
even,
about
tails you benefit. Yes?
Oh, when I was looking through some of these, I did find one that was upwardly adjusted, and I thought that was interesting.
No, that will be repaired for sure, if that's pointed out. A lot of people come in and they don't even want to talk to the hearing officer. They want to appeal, but they have this big complicated thing worth millions and millions of dollars, and they have like constitutional objections or things that are outside our scope, and so they want to go directly to district court, so they get an administrative denial and they can go right through the system.
It's just a step they have to take to get to the next
Yes.
step.
Yeah, they have to be present in the system to win, but they don't have to compete. There was no change on 275 properties. The hearing officers looked at it, and about 30% of the time just said, well, appraisers got it right the first time.
But they can go to a next step from there.
They can appeal, absolutely.
So those 654 properties that were adjusted amounted to a value of $1 billion, is that correct?
No, actually more than that. These 654 properties here had an average of about $1.1 million in reduction, and the aggregate of that is about $1.3 billion. So this process sliced up 1.3 billion off of your rolls in value. So you went from starting at about 14.8 down to 13.5 or so. So you declined and one of the questions we answered for Steve was, how much the property increased? And the answer was, it's like 78%, and when we were done with the process, the average increase was like 68%.
Yeah.
So there was a decline, a noticeable decline.
And those numbers will change following the pursuit of the administrative denials that go to the next step.
Right.
To the appeal, so those numbers are still subject to change as well.
Right, your valuation, which you don't need for this year, but you'll need in subsequent years, will be affected by the outcome of the various court cases downward, or further appeals at this level. So when you're a property taxpayer and you come in and you say, oh, well, Mick set me at $15 million and I really should be 14, and he didn't agree, then they have three ways they can appeal that. They can go directly to district court, and that's an expensive process, and you can sign over your house to the law firm and they'll take care of you. Or you can go to the Board of Assessment Appeals in Denver, which is a trial setting, but not nearly as onerous and strict and complicated as John can explain. Or you can have another hearing before another hearing officer and do the whole thing that you presented to me. You didn't like my result. And you get a what they call binding arbitration, like baseball players. You would come in before a totally different hearing officer, and that would be a final decision. You couldn't go to district court after that.
Did you get any of those?
Arbitration's next.
Yeah,
Yes?
yeah. People will be appealing the decisions, even if we lowered their value. So you came in at 16. The appraiser, Wendy, says, well, in consideration of what I heard today, I recommend 15. The hearing officer scratches his head and says, well, I think that's a good recommendation. You can appeal that. Even though you went down, you can say that Ms. Schultz did not recommend a big enough decrease, and I want to appeal that. And you're not going to be punished. Nobody's going to come in and say, well, we offered you 15, now we're going to get you back to 16. That isn't how it works. As a general rule, when you're in this process, you don't go up. You either stay even or go down.
So let me ask a question about all that. So right now, this pool of almost 1,600 protesters, can this whole pool continue on to part of the appeals, or do the ones who have stipulated, are they pulled out of the
great
pool
question.
right now?
If you stipulate, that's the end of it. No appeal.
Okay, so we're down to 1,200 that could go on
Right.
to
The
an
next
appeal.
steps.
Right.
I'm a little curious about that process related at the state, the Board of adjustment that's sort
Well,
of a
this-
trial setting, but not a.
Okay, if you went crazy on your stipulations and you just gave away the farm, I'm sorry, Steve, I'm not your farm, but if you just started, just for convenience, cutting everybody's tax bill in half, then the state reviews the data and they say, you went too far. Now, in this case, going from, down to 68% increase instead of 86, that I don't think is going to trigger a lot of angst at the state. Now, if you went down and stipulated close to what the old values were, they'd say, yeah, that's not fair.
But I guess I'm just wondering, for the folks who choose that path to go, what's the name of the state?
Stipulation?
The
Board of Assessment Appeals.
Board of Assessment Appeals, BOAA, okay. What does that look like? I'm just interested that, now we have sort of a state board that is adjudicating our local decisions about property tax. What do they use? Do they just use everything that our assessors have access to?
No, you get to bring in everything you want, right, John? And then they get to bring in everything they want. It's like a whole new deal, and it's more formal, and you bring in witnesses, and you go, well, isn't it true that your neighbor has 17 Arabian horses and you share them? You can get that far.
Will our assessors be
yes.
part of those
Yeah, I was
trials?
gonna say, who's on
the BOAA?
Yeah, they have to go down.
And typically, our office will represent them.
Right.
I see. Okay. I'd love an update as this unfolds about how many of this pool of 1,200 choose whichever path.
Well, the chief appraiser, Wendy, who we've been talking about in front of her, Wendy Schultz, she and others anticipate there are a lot of people who are going to want to carry on through the process, one way or the other. Now, if you own a $70 million property and you think you can get it down to $60 million, then you're talking about real money. If your house is $450,000, you think you've got an appeal that gets you to $425,000, you're saving about $35 a year. You're probably not going to hire a bunch of attorneys and do that. You could, but you're probably not. And some people have told us that they want to challenge the 4% math. And that is not within the scope of the hearing officer to do. You can't have somebody come in and say, well, look, I've got 3 properties in my neighborhood and they sold for this, and therefore we should use 2%. You can't do that because mathematically it's not sound to create a trend line based on 3 results. Sure. Unless you're like Fox News or something, but you can do that sort of thing. It's outside the scope of our authority, for another thing, and there's a real fairness and equity question, and that is, if you're going to do 2% for the people who come before you, but all the people who didn't appeal, thinking they couldn't get down to 2%, that's not fair to them, because they didn't have notice and opportunity to be heard about their property should have been 2% too. So you would have all these neighborhoods with little Byzantine, he got 2 and her neighborhood got 3 and that guy's neighborhood got, 1.5. That would be manifestly unfair. So we don't do that. We tend to focus on, as we should, the individual characteristics of the property.
Sure. I do have a related question to that. I don't know if now's the time, but we can. I guess I'm just wondering if there's, how do you identify outliers? So if you go back and an adjustment has, and a hearing officer determination has now adjusted a property value where they're really only going up a little bit from 2021. Is there some sort of marker that stands out to say, oh, let's go back and look at that, or not?
How do you know they're only going up a little bit, though?
Well, you can go back
unless
and
they
look
actually
at,
sell.
Well, but we've determined what the assessment value is for 2023. If everything else is going up 68% or whatever, and something's only going up 2, like, is there some, if one property is only
Okay.
going up like a little bit, like, is there a flag that makes you go, oh, maybe we didn't get that one right?
Okay,
You know?
you've
And
asked.
we don't have to go into, I mean, if that's,
No,
if you have
no,
more in the
I can answer it- I
presentation,
can
we
answer
can
that
answer that
pretty-
later, but it is a question
I can
that I
answer
have.
that one pretty quickly because, where's my screen? Oh, there it is.
But we don't have it again.
There you go. You will. There it is. Okay, the legal answer to that is the County Board of Equalization is not about trying to make her appraisal exactly equal to that person's appraisal. That would be impossible because the hearing officer or the appraiser didn't attend the other hearing. So it's not about comparing, and we're not allowed to compare to what your neighbor got from some other hearing. That's the first thing. The second thing is you are going to have properties that occasionally don't go up very much at all. But all of that decision to not have them increase very fast has to be based on market sales that the appraiser has to show. So, and this actually happened in ranch country. I'm not picking on Steve, but somebody had a ranch, but all the comparable sales around there didn't go up much. It's just a characteristic of that type of property. People weren't buying ranches very much. They weren't like demanding them. So you're going to have anomalies like that. But when all this is done, the state will audit again, I'm pretty sure, right? And they'll say, okay, taking into account what you discounted, you're still within reason appreciating the property. You're still treating it fairly. So if I can look, do I have it showing? Yes, I do. Oh, good. Yay, mouse. Love mouse. Okay, so this is what we're talking about. There were property appeals, and the first round value of all your property was that 14,813 I've been talking about, 913, sorry. And then the increase in the total value of appealed properties was 6.9 million. After the billion, I'm sorry.
I'm going, is there a B there or an M? B.
Patty, you know, a billion here, a billion there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money. Okay.
Yeah,
Everett Dirks.
got to be in that $1 billion sector.
So it was $6.9 billion in increase. And you can look at what my job here was. I looked at all the properties, the 20,000 properties, and then I matched them with the results of the hearings, and I made a table of that, and that showed me, and then I distilled for Steve, that the total increase was 6.9 billion. And then after the adjustments were made, you can see that it was only 5.577, et cetera, billion dollars. And instead of being up 86%, it was up 69%.
Over the 2021 assessment.
Yeah, over what was on the books on December 31st of 2022. So it had the very latest, thank you to the assessor's office, the very latest spreadsheet so I could, match them. So the hearing officers, when there was an appeal, the value per property adjustment downward averaged $1,050,000. The stipulations were a little larger, $1.534 million per property, and administrative denials are even larger still because more is at stake there. So, if you've got 58 properties and they're timeshares and you think they're overvalued, you're probably not going to want to have a 20-minute hearing in front of somebody you can't even list your properties during 20 minutes.
Yeah. Are you through with your questions?
For now.
For now? I have a question. So the 86% increase, have we ever been there before, do you know?
No, and I've been doing this for like 25 years. When Jeanette and I would go into a room with pieces of paper for each piece of property and a little tape recorder that we had to tape all the hearings and write on it what day it was and then make a determination. There was a spike in 2007, 2009 because of the dot-com boom, And properties actually went down after that. They kind of peaked on the valuation day, which is unfortunate for people, but they did get it back in subsequent years when things went down. And that could happen now, although so far there's no sign of it.
Although that was probably not a positive thing for people. Their taxes went down, but so did their value significantly. So
That's it.
So we know it's not even close to even throughout the county. Like my property went up 74%, but Greg's went up something like 350%. So it is interesting that we use the line of best fit for everybody. You know?
Well, no, you use the line of best fit for the market comparables.
Right.
And in Brush Creek Village is a neighborhood in transition. It's not yet Red Mountain, Starwood, downtown Aspen, but it's not the old rural place with people who built a house in the 70s. You're starting to get purchases in there by people who want to build an expensive luxury property. And so the demand for that land and the demand for an existing 1980s house has gone up because people visualize that as something they can scrape and replace, and
Right.
something that's already entitled and already has a guaranteed square footage. So that is what's going
And
on.
water tap.
So Greg's house went up for sure, and but it was part of all this surrounding properties going up, and that's what brings him up. Is this the comparables are going
Yeah,
up?
so it's all based on comparables, really, just like
Yeah.
when you go to put it on the market, it's all based on
Yeah,
comparables.
and that little chart we showed you with the little pictures at the top of Mar-a-Lago and those guys, that's the heart of the system
Yeah.
most of the time.
Okay, great, thanks, Mick.
All right. So, I guess that kind of wraps it up for me unless there are other questions. I do have, if somebody in the public or somebody on the board wants to see, and I've already provided it to Steve, a list of all those outcomes at the hearing officer level, or wants to see all of the properties in Pickens County, or all of the properties that were used to determine the 4%, wants to do their own regression line, just like when you were in college, and, psychology probably did that all the time. Well, height is related to nutrition, and so here's my regression line, but it's not perfect. And you can have all that data. I'll send it to you, no problem.
So
Can't
Mick,
wait.
Go ahead, Steve.
Steve?
your work that you did that I requested, we all got that information in our packet, so we all.
Right.
we
Well,
all
I
had
sent
that
it to you a
available.
little earlier because I knew you were probably not able to sleep at night without having the complete set of regression data, and
Yeah, and
I
I really
understand that.
appreciate that, and that was exactly what the information I wanted. You nailed it. Thank you.
Well, I can't sleep at night without that. Jeanette gets up at 5 in the morning to do this. We're the perfect team. I finish about 2 a.m. And then the next thing I know, I get up and she's kicked back to me all the ones that need a correction or a signature, or, something like that. So, yeah, that was, the hearing officer really putting out a lot of hours.
Yeah, no kidding.
And the data is there. It's all public. No hide the ball. If somebody wants to look up what your property used to be and what it is now, they can do that.
So it is unfortunate that a lot of people think that because the evaluations went up, that their taxes are going to go up at the same percent. I don't know how we continue to convince them that's not the case.
Well, I don't want to say for your benefit because you probably know, but people might be watching. If they're awake through all this math, they need to understand that the ultimate arbiter of how much taxes you pay is the boards who set the mill levy, not the assessor. Don't call her. She can't do anything. She's not supposed to. So CMC has decided they're going to cut their mill levy to provide some relief because they don't want to take the windfall. Back in the day when I was commissioner and John Ely was a new attorney, back in that day we actually did cut mill levies temporarily to sort of offset things and not to have to issue tiny refund checks. We actually did that. The process is well known. 160 jurisdictions do that already. They have the ability to cut, and they do. So they can do a temporary one, a permanent one, or as the county is contemplating through staff, you're contemplating this whole idea of certain people getting some benefit and depending on their income. And, you know, do you really want to give your local oligarch, if there is one, you know, a discount of $1 million in his tax bill?
Yes.
Yeah, and I work hard to not confuse the topics, right? Because clearly the headline today is our budget went up by 14%, not by 69%. So they're divorced. They're sort of divorced conversations from each other. But I do have a few more questions, I guess. I'm wondering, when I'm going through this, did we have specific hearing officers that were looking at commercial protests
Yeah, you
and
know,
residential protests?
we have, Dan Pope is the chief appraiser for commercial
Right.
purposes. And I've been doing this so long that a lot of those come to me. I don't know if all of them do, but a lot of them, because I've seen that property 3 times before. And it has to do with capitalization rates, which we could talk about. But a capitalization rate is basically what the market thinks that it will earn on a particular piece of property. So if it's downtown core, sweet commercial where everybody just about has to go through by, that thing will have a low capitalization rate because it's highly secure. So it may generate $100,000 a year at, you know, this jewelry store, but people think that's like buying a treasury bond. So it's only, I expect a 4% return on my investment, and 4% of X that equals $1 million is $2.5 million. So something that produces $100,000 a year is going to be a $25 million property. Sorry about the 2.5. Anyway, that's how that works. We could spend time on it, but I get a lot of those. I read the capitalization, the cap rate studies. Randy Gold does the
So are
best
you
one.
the only hearing officer for commercial?
No, I don't think so. I think others
Jeanette-
got.
You wanna answer
Hi,
that, yeah.
Kelly. Liz Newman and Kim Tarver reclused themselves from hearing any commercial because they knew they felt like it was a little bit more than what they were qualified to hear. So it was Mark Bergman, Ryan Kane, and Mick who heard all commercial because they're qualified.
Okay.
to do
And
that.
then did we notice, and this is probably a question for Deb, I guess, but have we looked or noticed like any patterns in the protests themselves? You know, like do we notice like one appraiser may need more training because they've had a significant number of protests compared to everybody else, or, you know, certain neighborhoods stood out, or anything like that? Possibly. Okay.
Well, the appraisers, the assignment is basically random. The appraisers don't get to say, well, gee, I'll take the Hotel Jerome. It's not like that. Or we have the Hotel Jerome, so we'll give it to Cheryl because, you know, Cheryl likes hotels. It's not how it works. It's more random than that. And there's no attempt to match appraisers or hearing officers with particular pieces of property. It would be impossible. It's hard enough to, you know, get
Schedule
through
them as it is.
4,000 protests without trying to say, well, gee, I really want to do the hotel.
But is there not benefit to like the same appraiser doing one neighborhood? Like or does that cloud the?
No, they all have their own neighborhoods.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
I mean, I just, this year I
Learning
did
a
a
lot
lot,
on
I
this
did a
topic.
lot of snowmass. And it was actually a good thing because I use my aerial mapping when I really want to see detail. And I know where the ski in, ski out runs are, you know, Adams Avenue and Guggenheim Trail and all those things. So I can just look at the thing and say, yeah, you've got that. Or no, maybe you don't and this guy does and you should have a discount.
And then I have another question. Does the BOCC have to serve as the Board of Equalization?
Yes.
Like by
State-
law?
state statute, I believe.
Constitution? Yeah.
You can,
That's why you're accepting the determinations today, because the responsibility is the BOCC sitting as the BOE. And so, as Mick mentioned earlier, it started out with all 5 commissioners hearing all of the appeals, and then the commission decided, well, let's split this up. So I'll this 3 will do that, and then like that, and it just got too much even with that. So you deferred it to hearing officers, and then the hearing officer's decision through the assessor's office is brought back for you to accept. This is the actual decision of the day, of the process.
No, I get it. I just, because for me, it's hard to sort of, like, how would I justify opposing any of these? I don't
As a
know.
commissioner, you mean,
Yeah,
on the board,
like,
yeah.
as a commissioner sitting on the Board of Equalization, I have read through some of them. I have not been able to work
I'm
my
sorry.
way through all of the 1,600 worksheets from all of the hearing officers, but I have endeavored to dive into it. And, it's a little bit of like, okay, like I could have questions about certain things, but am I really qualified to sort of object to that as a commissioner sitting
Can
on
I
the BOE?
respond to that?
Please do.
I think if there was something that was really remarkable, put it that way, it would jump off the page, and I think staff would probably have pointed out that this, you may come across this one and give you the certain circumstances. Mick remembers when I was first on the board and I had no idea what the Board of Equalization was, let alone that it was me. And that Mick helped me through those first times when I had to be the hearing officer. It was very difficult to know the law, to know the numbers, to know how the whole process works. It was overwhelming, and when you have new commissioners coming and going, it was not in the best interest of the public. Having the hearing officers who do such an amazing job, who have the background and the knowledge, and who you could ask them a question about, because you can see who heard them and say, I have a question about this, and they're approachable. That is a huge benefit to our community.
Yeah. No, and I get that. In aggregate, I have great faith in the work presented to us.
I
for
circled
sure.
some as I went through, but
I know there's somewhere I'm like, oh, why, the petitioner offered this value, but we stipulated a lower value. Why didn't we stipulate the value that the petitioner offered?
sometimes they ask for the moon and they get what they can get.
I don't know.
Well, sometimes people don't realize that there is an encumbrance on their property that really devalues it, and that comes up at the hearing. And it's, whoa, I have a deed restriction that I'm going to sell it only to certain people for so much money. That comes up, and that may bring you down lower than you thought you would get.
And it goes in the record for future generations, so.
Yeah, and this group of appraisers will put little notes in their file and say,
It
okay,
updates the files.
this guy has a cracked foundation, and this guy granted, and this actually happened to me once, a view easement from his property so he could see the mountain, and that means you can't build your house bigger or you can't build it.
Well, and all of that is super helpful. I mean, I would,
And it's in their packet. So.
I would note that there wasn't a uniform standard, I'd say, in the way the worksheets were completed. So, like, some of them were just, the appraiser and the petitioner stipulated to this amount, and that's fine. That's the process, right? But others went into detail about why was the amount stipulated to that, and justifying, you could see the chain of logic that moved throughout the process to start at value, number A versus number C.
Kelly, part of that is because if Cheryl or Nanita enter into a stipulation before I have the hearing, then I'm going to say it was stipulated at. I'm not going to override that, what the parties agreed to. But sometimes it happens at the hearing, so I know the rationale. And the appraiser, Cheryl, might say, well, if I took this into account, I think $15 million would be reasonable. And the property owner says, okay, I will agree to that. Then I can put that into my form. But if I'm not present when the stipulation is made, I can't give an explanation. When I do mine, I like to give, explanations. If it's a complicated property with multiple trusts and LLCs and interlocking directors, and I won't name whose that is, But if it's that one, which I've had 3 times already, yeah, that takes a couple pages to explain. You know, and there's a couple like that. But for the most part, you want to put in a paragraph and say, well, after reviewing and hearing from the taxpayer about the problem with the property, like it's in an avalanche zone or something, then I will write that up for them. But if it's just a stipulation, they came into the office and they sat down with Wendy, and Wendy said, well, I think we could do this because you've brought up that. Then when it gets to me, it's just, here's a stipulation.
No, I know, but then when it gets to us, there's also, you know, so we're ratifying something that doesn't have the thickest
The full record, yeah.
picture to it.
But see,
I would say.
the advantage is, people have agreed to that. So, you know, how can they complain about, you know?
Yeah.
You buy an $8 million house and they're going to value it at $8 million plus inflation if you bought it during the period. They're just, you can't argue with that much.
Does anybody else have a question?
No, you know, I'm good, and this, I really appreciate all
Great.
your presentation today, because I understand the whole process better than I ever have before, and this is my 11th time going through this process, so.
Well, you have the material, you have, if there are questions, you can just email me at home and, you know, I'll give you an answer because I prepared that data and I'm pretty familiar with it.
Yeah, the packet was fantastic.
All right.
I do have a question related. So this is a 2-year assessment cycle, but I think there's some opportunity for appeal next year, right?
Well,
Like, how does that?
Okay, that's a little tricky.
Okay.
If you went to this process and you got a determination, you don't get to come back in next year and challenge it. But if you didn't participate in the process, you can do an abatement for a year or two retroactively and say, gee, I got this notice, I was on vacation in the Bahamas and, you know, I didn't respond and my property's, here's my case. And you get essentially a hearing after the fact, but it only goes back a couple of years, so. And then,
So
of course,
does the abatement process mirror this process?
It
then?
does.
We just call it something
Yeah,
different?
you get the
Okay.
you get the 20 minutes, and you get to present, and one of these geniuses over here are on the other side of the table, and they're going to say, "Here's why we did this," and then the hearing officer is going to listen to you and say, "Okay, but you do have the orange and black shag carpeting, so I will."
And then it comes back to us for an abatement process.
Yeah, then you'll ratify again.
But what if that shag carpeting is part of like a mid-century modern
You know,
aesthetic?
No, it's a Formica.
I'm going to look for a motion here.
I brought that up to a couple of people.
Oh, it's
Kelly.
public hearing.
Public hearing.
You
Great.
can
Is
apply
there
for
anybody
historic
here in the public
designation
who
because
would
you've
like
got
to
the
talk about this
orange
with
Formica.
Mick or anybody else?
All right.
Anybody
And is there
online?
anybody online, Abby?
I do have one more question.
Hey, Liz.
She's one of our hearing officers.
She's
Hi,
got her
Liz.
hand up. Yay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Oh, okay, great. I had raised my hand when Kelly asked one of her last questions about how the values might change, you know, during the hearing process. And now I can't remember exactly what your question was, Kelly, but I just wanted to say that the petitioners in the hearing process don't always agree. We don't come to an agreement during the 20-minute hearing necessarily. We might, and we may or may not call that a stipulation. Like Mick said, we might work on it a little bit differently and hand it out as a determination rather than a stipulation. There's so many words involved here, but in many of my hearings, they were so short and people had so much to say and were concerned about, you know, their taxes and a lot of things that we couldn't really help them with, but just trying to stay on task with what's different about your property, what can you tell us, and get all the information. We often did not come to an agreement during the hearing, and it was left to, even though sometimes the appraiser would offer a recommendation, lowering their value recommendation, and they would offer that in the hearing, that the petitioner wasn't willing to go with that and would rather wait to see what the hearing officer might decide. And so, anyway, I just wanted you to know that it's not always a decision that everyone agrees with at the hearing. Most of my people that came to me will not know what I came up with until after your ratification. So just so you know.
Well, and Liz, I will commend you. I think your narratives were quite thorough.
George
Which is
thinks
very
they were
helpful.
too thorough, but yeah. And I wanted you to know what I was thinking, just in case, something came back. So,
Well,
Thank you.
what does happen, and you'll see this, and you'll wonder, what are they thinking? Party comes in, hearing officer is present, and two of them say, okay, we'll settle at 12 million. And they're supposed to sign what's called a stipulation, which says, I agree and I waive right to further proceedings. And Taylor has to send that to them for signature. So, of course, they don't sign it because they're busy. And it comes back to me, did they stipulate? No, because you don't have a signature. They agreed. So I'll write agreed to, but not stipulated, and that preserves their right
To appeal.
to appeal.
Yeah, got it. Okay. And then, just one more question here. So, things are in flux, right? They're going to be in flux until all these final appeals are settled. How do we deal with that in terms of like property tax collection? It's like property tax bills go out in what, February? Is that the first?
So you're actually a year in the rears here. So we'll be collecting 2023 property taxes in 2024, and so we do have some uncertainty in terms of setting with Proposition HH.
HH, I was going to say, throw
certainly
that in the
coming
mix.
out. But we will, we're going to have tighter timelines to work with to get those bills out.
Right, but couldn't some of those stretch even past when the tax bills due for these assessments?
Yeah.
Well, you could go all the way to the state Supreme Court, and people have, and your $12 million house, they can't include it. But in the bigger
In the aggregate, these are all going to be settled
Exactly.
before.
Right, your $14 billion scheme of
understand.
things.
Yeah.
There'll be some stragglers and some abatements and some, yeah.
So do they pay what we ask them to, and then we pay them back?
In some cases, yeah.
Abatements. And
Abatements, yeah.
that would be the abatement
Yeah,
process.
okay. Thank
Is there
you.
anybody else in the public who would like to comment?
That's how I've always thought of it.
Okay, seeing none. Steve?
And I have a question, probably more directed to John. So by the Tabor rules, we can only raise the property taxes by 5.5%. Is
This year.
that, so some people got a reduction in their property valuation, many people didn't appeal, they have theirs at a certain level. Does that 5.5% apply to each individual property? Is it the aggregate of everything, or is the 5.5% related directly to the mill levy or to what we raised last year? So last year we had this much, we could raise it to 5.5%, therefore we have to set the mill levy at such and such a figure based on the total valuation.
So it's even a little more complicated. So I'll take just a few minutes. So Tabor has two revenue restrictions, and a total revenue restriction and then a property tax restriction. We, as have many other entities, have debruced from the total revenue restriction, which would be all revenues, save really basically federal revenues and those from enterprise funds. So then you have the property tax. Each property is going to exist within multiple taxing districts. Some of those taxing districts have also gone to a vote to remove the property tax limitation. In the case of Pickens County, we have funds that are in different profiles. So the general fund does operate under the 5.5% limit, but that's a maximum limit. The limit is actually based on a calculation of CPI, inflation, plus new growth. And actually, in my 20 plus years on the Western Slope, this is the first time I've been in an entity. It's hit the 5.5%. So it's unusual to hit that. That cap is usually lower. So, for example, in our general fund, we do give temporary mill levy credits to meet whatever that Tabor calculation limit is each year. Now, a property will also probably be in districts, potentially a school district or a special improvement district that perhaps has debruced that, and they don't have that same limitation. And so those are the conversations that we've been having about giving temporary mill levy credit so that the revenues match the expenditure needs. Within our own funds, we have two funds that have debruced the property tax limit, which would be our ambulance fund and our open space and trails fund. And so as we get through these calculations, that's going to be one of the determinations of this board, is to determine the revenue needs of those programs per property tax, and then to set the mill levy appropriately through a temporary mill levy reduction. So
Don't
When you
forget
say
the
credits, does
the
that-
ambulance district tax, though, built into the ballot question. There
Yeah.
are our own set of parameters.
we built in, yeah, so that as staff, that's what we'll be bringing back as the
Sorry, Nancy.
and so what a temporary mill levy credit is under Tabor, if you permanently cut your mill levy, you'd have to go back to a vote of the people if there was a reduction in value.
To bring it back up again.
Yeah, statute has authorized what's called temporary mill levy credits, where you can temporarily give a credit on mill levies that in the event of assessed values going down, you can take those credits back in order to collect the maximum that's allowed under Tabor.
Back from whom?
Well, you would change your mill levy so that you can collect the amount that's allowed
Okay.
under Tabor. Yeah, and so the credit, you're either
It's not like giving money back, you got a credit, we're gonna give it
Correct.
back to you. It's not like that.
I mean,
it's
if you really wanted to be obnoxious, you
Yeah.
wouldn't do that. You'd write everybody a check for $12,
Right.
and some oligarch $8,000, to adjust it down to.
Well, Polis did it last year. We got 750 and
so those are based on total revenue limits versus a property tax.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I do want to remind people out there who are seniors, and we get a lot of, I'm living on a fixed income, like Elon Musk does, or like $1,200 a month, and you have a real problem. The county has a program by which you can have half of your first $200,000 in value not taxed if you're a senior who qualifies by living there long enough. The state is going to lower the multiplier, and we won't go into that because we got to go home for dinner, but they're going to do that. The Proposition HH, if that passes, that'll result in a reduction of taxes. And this is really obscure, but it's important. If you've been in that house a long time and you're 65 and you never bothered to sign up for the county's, little $100,000 exemption, there's a provision in the Colorado Department of Revenue tax code that if you're qualified for the reduction but you never got one, never asked for one, you get a $1,000 credit on your state tax return. Most people don't know that, but it's in there. And so ask your tax guy, your consultant, whoever does it, or call TurboTax, whatever you have to do. If you haven't been getting that, get your $1,000. And if you have been getting it, make sure that if you want, make sure that you qualify for the $100,000 exemption. Now, $100,000 is not much. that saves you about $210 a year if you live in Aspen. Saves you more if you live in RE1 Basalt School District. So
Get the $1,000 retroactively if you haven't done it for 10 years.
you know, you might be able to amend your tax return to claim that if you haven't done the county homestead tax exemption. So I would look into that.
Okay. Okay, I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Wrong side of the table, Nick.
I will make a motion to ratify the hearing officer's determination of appeals of the Pickett County Assessor's valuation. This is a one reading, and we will be done
I'll second the motion.
for now.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank, we cannot thank you guys enough.
Thank you so much to all of you.
Thanks,
It's
Jeanette.
amazing the work you
Thanks,
guys
Sam.
have done.
Mick puts his shades
Good
on,
job.
he's going incognito out the door.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much for helping me. I'm used to like.
I think we have several people here for the next item, so I'd like to wait until after the next item to take a break, if that's okay with everybody. Does anybody need a break right now?
If I need a break, I'll get up and take one.
Great.
Grab more water.
All right, we're going to move to an emergency ordinance confirmatory reading. This is an emergency ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners approving an extension of the current lease and use agreement with Trajan Flight Support LP, also known as Atlantic Aviation. Are you going to talk to us about that, John?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you, John.
So this is a confirmatory reading of the ordinance that you mentioned, Francie, that was enacted and adopted by the board on September 13th. It became effective at the time of the vote, and since that time up to before today, the amendment to the lease agreement has been executed by both parties and is currently in effect, which is a good thing because the existing lease would have expired September 30th. The Home Rule Charter provides that the county can take emergency actions, in other words, actions that are effective immediately, provided that there is a confirmatory reading set after that event. This is that confirmatory reading, and this is also a public hearing for anybody to address the board that may want to, based upon the action that was taken. The amendment to the lease provided for a couple of different things. Primarily, it provided an extension of time on the expiration of the leasehold. It was set to expire September 30th in this year. It will now expire September 30th of 2024. Another aspect of the amendment was to set specific terms for compensation to the county, and this is to the county through the airport enterprise, and any funds collected through this lease will be maintained in association with that enterprise and only be used in furtherance of activities of the enterprise. So in other words, it cannot contribute to the county's general fund or any other funds. It is a airport dedicated stream of revenue. So the base rent for the year extension will be $1.75 million in total for the 1 year, and the minimum annual guarantee for fuel flowage fees will be at $12 million, again, for the entire year. The agreement for an extension of this lease is, I mentioned last time at the execution and the adoption by the board, is that it's fortuitous on the county's part just to have Atlantic to work with because they are the current leaseholder. They are the entity that remains in possession of that leasehold that we are dealing with in this extended 1 year period. And also they were the party that prevailed in the selection of various responses to a request for proposals that the county published. Gosh, that was quite a while ago now. I can't remember when that was initially published. At any rate, so we get to have some consistency of dialogue with with the principals of Atlantic and trying to work toward what would be a long-term lease for the FBO facility. The reason that that was not done now is that we do not know what that leasehold is going to look like primarily. We are waiting for the adoption of a new airport layout plan, or at least enough movement on the new airport layout plan that there is some assurance of what leasehold we have to offer to Atlantic. With that, those events and those circumstances, it was appropriate to do an emergency ordinance so that we would not have interruption of services at the FBO for our airport, and have some cushion of time built into an ability to consider terms for a new long-term leasehold. The amendment provides for consideration that discussion will be ongoing and continuing throughout the one-year extension, and recognizes that if the parties come to an agreement, the compensation levels to the county will be increased by $6 million for this one-year term. Let's see.
Well, before
The
you go
only-
on, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
About the fuel flow? So I'm assuming we're not expecting to sell 12 times as much fuel as we have the year before. And it's a huge, like 12 times increase more, I think. And so is that because the price of fuel's going up, or because we realized we weren't getting our share of the fuel flow money in the first place? It just seems like a huge jump in value. And
It's a good question. It really doesn't have anything to do with fuel flowage fees.
okay,
There, on the existing leasehold, there are a number of different fees and charges that the county assesses to the FBO operation and the leaseholder of the FBO space at the airport. What the intent of this one-year amendment was to do is in increasing the term of the leasehold by 1 year, is to set up a fixed known amount of consideration to be paid for it. Phrasing it as a MAG associated with fuel flowage gets us there. And the result really is not something that will be accounted for by an independent audit, say, at the end of the year, like we might do on a normal circumstance to evaluate fuel flowage. This is a fixed amount. It's set, and so the county knows exactly what consideration will be paid during that 1 year period of time.
so it's not an indicator that the price of fuel is going to go up significantly?
No, not at all.
Thank you.
The only other thing I would mention is that all the other terms to the existing leasehold stay the same for this 1 year extension.
Okay. Questions from the board?
Well, it was, I think the question was answered already by what you just stated, but we did receive a number of letters from pilots who were worried about, I think they were feeling like they were going to be charged way more for fuel to pay for them fueling at the airport.
Right.
And felt like they couldn't afford that. But you've answered that adequately. That
Yes, Kelly.
This does raise a question for me that, are there regulations or opportunities that exist to prevent price gouging? Like, do we just rely on a market-based approach for?
The approach to
How things are set there?
fees and charges and the valuation of services that are associated with activities or other things that are provided at the airport is regulated, like every other aspect of the airport, heavily by the FAA. So the FAA creates a responsibility not only on the part of the provider, in this case Atlantic, but also on the part of the airport sponsor, us, to make sure that charges are realistic, that they are not gouging, and they are not based upon what the market would bear, so to speak. So that if we have a clientele coming in and out of the airport that would gladly pay, 10 times the existing rate for fuel, say, that doesn't mean that you can just charge that across the board, because that would, in the eyes of the FAA and their regulatory scheme, limit access to the airport. And actually that is completely the opposite direction that the FAA moves, which is to increase opportunity and access for an airport facility.
Patty?
Yeah, when talking about local aircraft, locally serving local pilots, do we have specific provisions now as far as charges differentiated from just the general aviation?
There are discriminations in recognition of local-based aircraft or local-based pilots in regards to landing fees that the county charges. As far as the charge for fuel, is that
And other general charges that.
right, that is not part of the existing lease, but the operator, Atlantic, is free to confer discounts on that basis if they decide to. And I know that, for a number of years, I'm not sure how far it goes back, they have done that very thing.
Yeah, I just, at the end of the day, whenever that end of the day may be, I just want to make sure that we're doing whatever is possible, legally possible, or, offered to the county to protect our local flying public.
So this doesn't say this is a public hearing, but I think there might be some people here who want to talk. Are there people here who'd like to address this particular item?
Confirmatory reading is public hearing.
So we can make it a public hearing then?
It is a public
Okay,
hearing.
yeah, it doesn't say that. Okay, so I'd like to open the public hearing. And is there anybody out there who'd like to talk to the board?
Hawk, don't be shy.
I'd like to.
Good.
Let's see, where do you want me?
I don't know if that mic was working earlier.
Should be working.
Okay, well, my name is Hawk Greenway, and I've been a client out at the Aspen Airport for better than 25 years. That means I've had a tie down for a little piston-powered aircraft, and been using it in all kinds of different supportive roles in the county here, including mountain rescue and conservation easement monitoring and so forth. So I have some thoughts about your extension of this lease in this fashion. I was made aware of this meeting through my membership in the Airplane Owners and Pilots Association, and as Patty was saying, that they were quite excited about increasing costs on airplanes on pilots. I'm not so worried about that. It's an expensive place to keep an airplane and to operate an airplane. But what I am concerned about is the alternatives to Atlantic. Atlantic is a very large corporation that operates all over the country, and not particularly friendly to pilots. I mean, they're like any corporation. Their responsibility is to their shareholders and increasing their profits. Whereas I'd like to urge you to use this year that you have with this emergency extension of this lease to look at alternatives to external corporate operation of the airport, and particularly looking at the way that Jackson Hole operates their airport, where the town and the community of Jackson Hole operates the airport, including the Jackson Hole Aviation. You guys could do great. They utilize best practices for noise abatement, for employment. I think it's a really valid alternative with an attendant hanging on to the profits from doing so within the county here. So rather than sending them elsewhere with any kind of corporate shareholders, there's no reason why this airport couldn't be operated in-house. So with that, I think that's all I've got here for you. Oh, the other question that I had is and I think you mentioned this, John, after this 1-year extension, one of the reasons that you're using a 1-year extension is because you're not sure of what you have leasing-wise going into the future as far as what the facilities for the FBO would be. And once that has been determined through the course of time, at that point, this is a question, would you then reopen that bidding process to the overall aviation community, the other bidders that are out there and so forth, including looking at it as an in-house bidding, basically keeping a hold of it yourselves?
Essentially, Hawk, this preserves the county's options going forward without having to step in and try to run the facility ourselves overnight.
Right.
If the board decided that it would to go that way, then yes, the procurement process essentially has the ability to be canceled pursuant to the procurement code, and then something else can happen. And that something else could be rebidding, or it could be just canceling the project, so to speak, and that would be the county taking over the FBO facility. So none of those decisions have been made with absolute finality by the board yet, but because we are moving forward in a way that is going to see some redevelopment of the facility, we want to be in a position to continue to pursue having a private operator in there. So that was the reason for the publication of the RFP and for the 6 or 7 respondents to put the work into providing us with proposals and for the evaluation. So if we continue along that line, then more than likely we wouldn't be going out again. We would work with the prevailing party, the highest scorer in that procurement process, which was Atlantic.
And so basically no chance of considering taking a look at like the Jackson Hole alternative about keeping it in-house.
Well, if you keep it in-house, you don't put that out to bid. You simply keep it in-house and run it.
We are planning to go to Jackson Hole or
We're planning to talk
communicate with them, and we'll see whether we go or not, but we're definitely planning some time with them.
Great. Yeah, I think they have a really valid alternative with a governing board set up there to operate it, and I think it addresses both local pilot interaction with the decision-making process, and then it also is a revenue-generating entity for the county there, or for the municipalities there.
Just thank God we're not located in a national forest.
National Park.
National Park.
Well, thank you very much,
National
Hawk.
Park.
You
I
bet.
know Ty has enjoyed your piloting.
You bet.
Yeah, thanks, Hawk.
As
It's so
I
good.
have with him.
Hawk, good to see you.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to be able to
I think you might.
join a meeting here.
I think we'll go to somebody online who'd like to address this.
Scott Simon?
Needs to unmute. Is he muted?
Hey there.
There he
I
is.
just had a simple question since I never understood this about the fuel costs. Up here, so Aspen, Eagle, Rifle, all are essentially the same price for fuel. If I go to Colorado Springs, it's literally, I pay $5 a gallon less. It's less than half the same price. How does the FAA look at sort of what is too high, right? Like you said, okay, well, if it's $90 a gallon, I'm definitely not flying. But it is in the mid-9s, which seems like a lot when it's $4.56 at Colorado Springs.
Want to try to answer that, John?
Well, the FAA is not bound to a strict litmus on how to evaluate excessive pricing of fuel or any other product or service. But I can't imagine they wouldn't take into consideration the cost of getting fuel up here versus the cost of delivering fuel to Colorado Springs, for example.
Is that all, Scott?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else on there, Abby? I know I saw somebody from AOPA. Yeah, go ahead, Brad.
Yes, good afternoon. I appreciate you opening this up for public comment. My name is Brad Schuster. First of all, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm the Regional Manager for Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, responsible for upwards of 25,000 members in the region, over 7,000 in the state, and approximately 100 there at Aspen. That have expressed many concerns about the direction you're going. I wanted to make sure that you did receive our letter from our president and CEO, Mark Baker.
Yes, we did.
Which outlined some of those concerns. Go ahead.
Yeah, we received it. Thank you.
Okay. And effectively offer myself up as a point of contact for you and Mr. Bartholomew and others that are involved in the process going forward. It's our job to stay closely connected with the airports, but it's always at the benefit of the pilots, and we still have grave concerns not only about what we anticipate, just based upon 85 years of advocacy experience of downline fees flowing to our pilots and members and other users at the airport as a result of this lease extension, and further concerns about the limiting of competition, thereby reinforcing the current near monopoly that Atlantic possesses. So again, mostly want to introduce myself. Thank you for your time, and offer myself up as a resource for this body and the airport going forward.
Oh, thank you very much, Brad. Is there anybody else in the room who'd like to talk about this? Anybody else online?
Nobody else in the room?
Seeing none,
Most
I'll
people
bring it back to the
listening
board.
in.
Anybody on the board? Patty?
Yeah, I understand the concerns all the way around. I mean, this is not an easy issue. We've been talking to other airports. I did have an opportunity to speak directly with the Board of Supervisors in Orange County about John Wayne and how they operate their facility there. The board is really open to that. I want the public to know that. This is, in my years of service on this board, this is one of the most difficult issues I think that's been brought before us. But we're working on it diligently and openly, transparently. And right now, for me, we need to just see how things pan out over the next few months, where we're going to be. Again, as John Ely said, we've got a lot of doors that are still open, and we are talking about them and considering all of the options still as we move forward. But for now, we need to move this emergency ordinance forward because we need to have an operator of our FBO in the interim. And it just made, of course, sense to have Atlantic maintain that, at least for the next few months, see how the negotiations go with a long-term lease, or where we might want to go differently if the board chooses. But I'm comfortable moving it forward. And I just, as far as, I do have concerns over taking the FBO in-house. It's called liability. And, we have a lot of jets out there that are worth a lot of money. So we need to be thinking of the best interest of the travelers, the guests, the users of our airport, and of our community as a whole. So for me right now, moving this forward is where we need to go, and we'll see where time takes us.
Well, would you like to make a motion?
I would like to make, well, I'll wait for the rest of the board, and then I would be happy to make a motion.
Yes, Steve?
So I just wanted to address the uncertainty about the exact land that we have for, the lease for the FBO, and that's all tied up in the airport layout plan process, and we are waiting for our negotiations and decision by the FAA to get certainty on that. And I really hope long before the 12 months is up, before this new temporary lease expires, that we do have certainty in terms of the land that's available for the FBO. So those negotiations with Atlantic can, gain some traction and maybe, hopefully get to conclusion.
Kelly?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, this is always anything on the airport is a tough issue. I've long believed that the community has not been benefiting from the value of the FBO asset to the extent that we should be. And I think that we have an opportunity before us temporarily and in the long term to recalibrate what that looks like for greater community benefit. What I expect that this lease extension will result in is a greater share of the profits coming back to the community. And what I would hope to not see is greater expense passed along to the communities using the airport. So this is going to be really important to know that, and really answer that question in the next year, so that we have even better information with which to evaluate our long-term opportunities. And again, those opportunities are right now, we've issued an RFP, we're in a contract negotiation. This board will have to approve any contract for long-term lease, and at that time we have committed to evaluating all of the various business structures that could take place out at the FBO. So having a real contract with which to determine, is this right for us, or an evaluation of, is there a different model that is better for the community? And so those things I expect to kind of line up at the same time. So we're not punting on that opportunity. We're not taking anything off the table for evaluation. We're really in a process, I think, right now of assessing and collecting as much information that we can about what is going to be the best long-term prospects. Again, in my eye, is always for how is the community going to best benefit from this asset. And so in the meantime, we are exploring, looking at other models. We are planning visits and communications with other airports who have enacted other models, sort of really learn on the ground, how might that look in Pickens County, and to best make the best decision for the community going forward. So I actually think that this is the right thing to do. We need to keep the FBO functional now, and we're going to really leverage the interim time period to better be prepared to represent this county to its high standard.
Can I just tack on real quick? And Kelly, I just would like to see the negotiations hopefully coming back sooner than a year. I'm looking at my county attorney.
That would be great.
Yeah, so that we have time to then have a thorough discussion at that point, rather than getting pinched up against another September deadline. So I'm hoping we can be working in a direction where it gives us some breathing room rather than just reaction room. So let's see what we can get going in that direction.
I'd like to take a minute to point out that the negotiations for this year's lease are very much in the best interest of the county. It's a significant change from what we've been receiving before, and I think it's a really great step forward to the county, as Kelly put it, benefiting to the best level possible as an airport. So I'm pretty happy with this contract, and I also would like to see it come back and give us like 6 months maybe to work on the next step.
Yeah. So the challenge there, just for the board and the public, is also the ALP process, which may take a little bit longer than that.
Nonetheless, I didn't to really announce that, but I would like to see agreement between the county and Atlantic to essential terms we'd still be in the same position we're in now should the ALP not be adopted, and having it finalized and adopted in 6 months is not realistic, but having the ball moving is. And so it would be certainly a target of mine to hopefully have that concluded within 6 months.
And I totally agree with John on that. That is something that should be able to be concluded much quicker.
So Francie, if you have closed the public hearing, I'm going to bring it to the board for a motion.
I closed it a while ago.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I want to make sure we're following all the rules here. I want to make a motion to approve and confirmatory reading after public hearing an emergency ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners approving an amendment to the current lease and use agreement with Trajan Flight Support LP or Atlantic Aviation. This is again a confirmatory reading, and I'm going to make a motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
Any further comments? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you.
All right,
Thank you all. Thank you. All right.
All right, now we're going to take a 10-minute break. We will be back at 2:45.
So Glenn, is your
Pandora?
son coming?
Welcome back to the regular meeting of the Pickens County Board of Commissioners on Wednesday, October 11th. We are moving into land use. Everybody's ready to roll, it looks like. So I'm going to turn it over to Leslie right away. This is the resolution designating the Clavel homestead to the Pickens County Historic Register and granting an incentive for the designation, granting special review approval and GMQS exemptions for a caretaker dwelling unit, and approving an amendment to the activity envelope, site plan, and development agreement for 153 LLC, the Craig Ranch Parcel 8. Take it away, Leslie.
Hi, thank you. So, as you kind of read off the title, the purpose of this application is to request historic designation of the Clavel Homestead and to convert the cabin into a caretaker dwelling unit. One of the incentives of historic designation is the opportunity to request exempt residential floor area via a GMQS exemption and special review. So I'll give you a brief history of how we got here on this property and then turn it over to the applicant's representatives and Susanna Reed, the Pickens County Historic Designation Officer. The affidavit of public notice was provided and it meets our criteria in the code. So I put up on the screen the location of this property. The property is roughly 153 acres. So this is parcel 8 of the Craig Ranch subdivision. At the time of the Craig Ranch subdivision, the Clavel cabin was required to be stabilized. At the time, well, that was during subdivision review and approval, but the cabin was never stabilized. So the current property owners who now own parcel 8, they came through activity envelope and site plan review on the property, and one of their conditions of approval was to stabilize the cabin. And so let's see here if I can. So the cabin has been stabilized, and again, that was part of their development of the property, and that was part of that approval. The applicants now want to convert this cabin into a caretaker dwelling unit for a ranch employee. The Craig Ranch subdivision and PUD provided for a maximum of 7,500 square feet of residential floor area. The residential development that the applicants are pursuing and almost done with is at 7,500 square feet. This cabin, if converted into a caretaker dwelling unit, would be 846 square feet. So the historic designation gives them the opportunity to ask for the GMQS exemption of additional floor area. A development agreement was recorded when the Craig Ranch was subdivided. So that development agreement is an agreement between all the owners of the Craig Ranch subdivision as well as Pickens County BOCC. So that development agreement is also required to be amended as part of this development request. The homeowners have signed off on that agreement to add additional square footage to the property for the purposes of the caretaker dwelling unit. Finally, an amendment to the activity envelope is proposed. When we did activity envelope and site plan review for this property, there was an activity envelope that was drawn around this cabin. They're proposing to just expand that activity envelope in order to get in there and do better stabilization and grading around the cabin as they convert that to a CDU. Staff recommends approval of the historic designation and the GMQS and special review for the conversion of the cabin to a residential unit, including the remnants of the rest of the homestead that are off to the side of this cabin. There's some remnants of agricultural structures that are adjacent to this cabin. Staff also recommends the proposed amendment to the activity envelope. Before I turn this over, there are 2 items in the resolution that I want to recommend changing the language on. They're really clarification language, but we can do that when we get to discussing the resolution.
Okay. Kelly?
So this cabin had not been given any credit for historic preservation prior.
No.
And will there be a driveway that goes up to this cabin that's
Do you have a,
affected by?
on
you
your
can tell us
presentation,
what
do you have
it
the
is.
site plan?
That's just-
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Review that
Okay.
on.
Thank you.
I have a question about the cabin as well. So will the outside of the cabin be the same, and then you'll have interior walls that are separate from the original structure? It'll be like a house inside a house, sort of?
Basically,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And you'll still get 800 square feet out of it? That's amazing.
It'll be a loft.
846.
It's a little loft.
Okay.
And there's no chicken coop.
There's no coop.
But there's some other little things.
Other things.
Do you want me
I'll
to
show you.
stop?
You want me to stop sharing?
Sure.
Suzanne, if you want to go before me? No, go ahead. Okay.
I'm going to go for a little bit, and then I will hand it over to Sarah and then resume.
And it's nice to have you here before us.
Thank you. This is my first. Let's see. You don't want that one. All right. I thought this might happen. My first BOCC presentation.
You promised to
And
be
your
nice.
name is?
Having me. My name is Cody Davis Horn of Davis Horn Incorporated. I'm introducing the land use request for the Craig Ranch Parcel 8. It's owned by 153 LLC. The controlling partners of 153 LLC are Nick and Barry Summers. They intend to use this to become their residence and, do I have a, yeah, there we go, residence and ranch. To give you an idea of the context of the property, this is Parcel 8. It's just north of the Elam Gravel Pit here, and it basically divides the Roaring Fork from Woody Creek. And as you step onto that bench, that is Paradise Mesa. If you're going up Woody Creek and you see Carol Craig's old white house and take a right and go up to the mesa, that is, and then veer right even further, that is Parcel 8 or 365 Paradise Mesa. It was part of the former larger Craig Ranch, which was 1,180 acres approximately. When it was subdivided, it created 8 of these parcels, along with a few conservation easements. And Parcel 8, we're told that the old ranchers used to go up and drive their cattle onto Paradise Mesa and then across McLean Flats into their summer ranges in Hunter Creek. So that's kind of a fun anecdote that provides some historic context for Paradise Mesa. It is home to the Clavel Homestead and is visible from State Highway 82.
Sorry, so the access is off of Woody Creek Road, not off of
That's right.
like Raceway or McLean
There's
Smith Hill?
some
Okay.
access history there, but we won't get into it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. It's a weird hook to the right and then up a hill.
Yeah. So the Clavel Homestead is a valuable historic resource. It's still standing because of the current owner's efforts to stabilize it and rehabilitate it. The stabilization was required by the historic covenant for the Craigs to do the stabilization. However, it never occurred under the Craig ownership. So the current owners are stabilizing and rehabilitating the structure in good faith with the historic covenant conditions, which were imposed on the previous owner. So as you know, in Pickens County, Pickens County prioritizes historic resources and designated properties through incentives. Leslie covered them. One of those is an increase to exempt floor area from GMQS. You also offer TDRs or free market dwelling units, second free market dwelling units. In this case, the applicant's just requesting
that 846 square foot increase to the allowable floor area on the property. So historically designated properties are a valuable resource. They preserve the local history by memorializing relics like the Clavel homestead. And this is where I will pass it to Sarah to talk about the relic and historic significance of this property.
Thanks, Cody. Could you unshare so I can share?
Sure.
Thank you.
Did everybody notice how easy it was for Cody to do all these steps on the computer?
It's all Abby.
It's that younger generation we bring in, right, Glenn?
Okay.
And Abby.
All right, I'm Sarah Adams with Bend & Adams. Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here to talk about the Clavel cabin. This is the original home of Fred and Philemon, I love her name, Philemon Clavel. They were really instrumental in the emergence of the Austin culture and in the development of ranching in Pitkin County. And here is looking at the back side of the cabin over towards Highway 82. Now, I'm going to not go too deep into the Austin history. I feel like I've explained this to you many times,
Given
so
us wonderful
I'm going to
history
give you
classes.
the high level.
No, it's so cool.
Love to hear about Glenn's trip.
I
one of
know.
these
Glenn
days.
was nice enough to offer this photo. And like I've said before, and I love to illustrate how similar the Val d'Aosta is to our terrain and how that really attracted the Italian immigrants that were trying to find free land without taxes, without the political pressures, and without some of the prejudices that they were finding in Italy that caused them to want to move here. So Fred Clavel and his wife Philemon immigrated with their 2 children, Mary and Frank, in 1882. So they're really some of the earliest immigrants from this area to come to the valley. Sorry, I'm waiting for my daughter to show up, so I just want to make sure she got off the bus okay, if I keep turning around.
We'll keep an eye out for it.
Thank you. Give me a little heads up if a 10-year-old comes in. So there's a really, as you know, strong Austin community in the Mid-Valley, and what's really important about the Clavel family is that they really helped sponsor and host a lot of these families. You can find letters back and forth, newspaper articles of the Clavels really encouraging their fellow Austins to come to the Roaring Fork Valley, to come to the United States. And then when they got here, they gave them a place to stay. They gave them jobs. They helped, lease some of the land that they had so that they could really get their feet on the ground. And I think that's just a really special story that the Clavels brought to the county and to Colorado in supporting our ranching culture. So I'll be brief about this. The cabin is right here. So we have Woody Creek Road, the community school. You can actually see the cabin from the community school. My daughter goes there, and so I'm always like looking, and you can definitely see it. So Woody Creek Road. This is the hill that you travel up around to get to the cabin. Some of the remnants I'll show you pictures of are located really proximate to the cabin right around here.
So it's behind the Hall & Oates Ranch?
Where's the
Oates?
Hall &
Is it
Oates
Oates who
Ranch?
owns that?
They were on the other side. I think Hall & Oates was on the
I
other
think
side.
they're on that side. I thought it was right
Is
in
that
there.
right?
Do you know, Leslie?
They are? They're on
Suzanne's
this
saying
side?
that's correct.
But if you're driving from the tavern
I-
up towards the school,
I'm thinking
it's
of
on
the
the
other
right
guy.
side of the road.
Yeah, I was thinking about
Yeah,
those
it's on the
other
right.
famous people that are on the other side.
But wasn't some of the Craig Ranch conservation on the other side of the road? Okay, that's why I was a little confused, yeah.
And can I ask another quick question? We have that map that up.
Yeah.
Where's the new home location?
We can get into that in the site plan.
Okay,
I'll take
okay,
care of it.
all right. Just so proximity to the,
Yeah, this is just an aerial map.
thinking driveways.
Could you trace with the
Cursor?
mouse the road going up, clear from Woody Creek Road, trace the,
There, I'm going to go backwards. It's off the map, kind of down. You go up this hill and cut across. and down, and it's nestled right here.
There already
And
looks
then
like
is
there's
it
an access.
Margaret Reckling's house that it goes by?
Steve, is your mic
Down by
on?
the Woody Creek Road?
Is your mic on?
Oh, no, it's not.
His mouth's moving, but the mic's not on.
Okay, so the cabin, based on newspaper articles, was built by Fred Clavell in 1885. So this is one of the earliest structures that we know of in Pitkin County, which is pretty amazing that it's still standing. Fred and Philemon had 8 children, so they came over with 2 and then had 6 more, and I'll show you an interior
gosh.
shot of the cabin.
And they lived in all of them?
Yeah, many of them were actually born and, at least when they were really young, raised in this cabin, which is awesome.
And it's still standing.
It's still standing.
It's a little different than what we do here now.
So it's a good segue into what Fred Clavell and his wife were like. I mean, obviously had a lot of grit. They had a lot of determination. They were constantly working to improve ranching and farming in the area. You know, he was out digging ditches, like I said, leasing ranches, buying land once he was a citizen to lease to the immigrants and friends and family that he was bringing over to really support the Austin culture here.
Was he irrigating from Woody Creek, or was this before the Salvation Ditch?
Yeah, it was before the Salvation Ditch. He dug Paradise Ditch, and then something he named Clavell Ditch. Like, I have, if you're interested, I have a lot of articles. I was going to keep this kind of high level because I can get in the weeds. But yeah, really interesting man who dug a lot of ditches. The Clavell Ranch was eventually sold in 1912 to the Wagner family. So I met Tony out here. We cruised around and talked about history and what he remembered, and it was a really kind of special experience. But there's just a lot of family names that you would recognize that are associated with the Clavell Ranch and with this homestead in particular. Over time, the cabin was not just rented to immigrant families, but also to working ranch hands. And then eventually, as you can see, it became kind of a shelter for livestock. Everything kind of got opened up, and it's, you can see like a dirt floor, and livestock would go there to find shelter from the weather. The good news is that the cabin is stabilized, and we feel really confident that we can do a pretty accurate preservation of this cabin. We can see where the original openings were, the roof form, which is pretty unique, and the dormers. Everything is intact enough for us to do a good job and not have to guess too much about what it originally looked like to turn it back into a residence.
Did it always have that many doorways? There's a lot of doors.
Yeah, you know, Tony and I spent a lot of time trying to figure that out. He said when it was converted into kind of an apartment, all the ranch hands had their own exit, so a lot of openings were added so everyone could kind of get out of their room. So
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah,
They had busy cows. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think it was more when it became apartments, a lot of windows became doors and things got hacked up a little bit.
Is that the original roof?
I don't know if it's the original
can't
roof.
tell
It's the
what that
original
is.
roof form. I mean, it's, you know, there's some rafters and things you can see that are original.
But that's a
But
metal
this is
roof,
a
or-
standing, yeah, this is a metal roof.
Oh,
That's
it's
not
metal.
what was
Okay.
there before.
It's not original. It would be.
No.
I couldn't tell if it was shingles.
Would be.
Yeah, no, it's.
Weathered zinc roof if it was.
It would,
original.
yeah, and it wouldn't,
Yeah.
it wouldn't look this good.
Heavy.
I mean, 1885 was a long time ago. So some of the remnants that Leslie was referring to that are pretty close to the cabin are here, and the recommendation
cellar?
is to document, them with photos and any sort of drawings and stuff, working with Susanna Reed so it can be included in your website and just additional information for the public to understand what ranching was life and how a ranch kind of evolved over time.
They're great photos with those clouds in them.
Okay, so this is likely the earliest Valdosta cabin in the valley, built in 1885. As I mentioned, it's built by Fred Clavell. The size is unique. It had a loft inside for some of their children, I guess, which is going to be brought back for a little more living space when this is converted into a CDU, hopefully. The pyramidal roof and the dormers are unique, and I'm sure Susanna Reed's going to touch on that a little bit. And as I said, there's enough evidence for us to work with Susanna to accurately restore this. The Clavel family hosted many of the early arrivals to the valley on their property. They contributed to the Austin community and the settlement of the Roaring Fork Valley in the late 1880s and the early 1900s. And we feel pretty strongly that the proposal to convert the cabin back to a residence as a CDU is consistent with its original use. And even more importantly, it ensures the cabin's preservation in the future. Once you start using it and living in it, you just keep it up. There's more maintenance, and it wouldn't end up in the state that it's in now. So I thought I'd close with this awesome photo from the Historical Society. This is the Woody Creek School and students in 1903. There's many Clavels in here, and Wagners and Cerises and many of the names.
There's got to be some Caparellas and some Madelons.
Oh, yeah.
So wait a minute, so Wagner, Cerise, what else did you say? What other names? Clavel?
There's Clavel, there's Gerbaz, there was a long list that Anna sent to me.
Really?
But we're just really proud to bring this cabin forward.
They're so cute.
For designation.
They're so cute.
I know, they're so cute.
So cute.
We think it definitely meets the criteria to add to the historic register. And I'm happy to answer any questions that
I
you
see
have.
a little one with a backpack coming up. I have a question. Larry Fite's house, was that Valdosta?
Yes, that was. Mm-hmm.
So is this
And
near-
John Bennett as well. So we've
right.
had a couple
I
coming
know that
through.
was ringing a lot of bells.
Yeah.
Was this school near the current tavern, or?
I think so. I think it was down in town, everything that I've seen. It's always these close-up shots, so it's not really
But
the
they've
best.
moved it, right? Isn't it
Well,
on
the
a property
communities,
along the
yeah,
road?
yeah. I
The
think
building?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think it moved over. I'm not great on my Woody Creek buildings.
Yeah, I'm closing my eyes.
Something you
driving
don't know
around.
about the history of this valley?
Don't worry.
I think it's by Skinny No Shows. That's a carpenter that lives down in Woody Creek, Skinny No Show. I think that's on his property.
So if there are any questions, I'll throw it back to Cody.
Cool.
Oh, that is the cutest picture.
I know.
I
Can't
don't know.
usually see kids that well in those kind of pictures. You know?
Except that one little squirm worm girl.
There
in the
was
front.
one that you couldn't see the
Yeah.
face.
I
It was a
don't
little
have
creepy.
a question, but just
Yeah.
a comment.
There's a little ghost.
In reading the names of all the Italian families, that just took me back to school in the 1960s because
You went to
half
school
of
all
those
the time.
names were kids in the school with
Right.
me. And we used to be able to pick up our party line and hear Italian being spoken on our party line.
So cool.
Wow.
So it's like, this just brought back a flood of memories of all my interactions with all of these families for
That's
60
awesome.
years.
Yeah, it's pretty special.
Try being at a Clapper family dinner with lasagna with the Madelons and the Caparellas, and the lasagna was incredible.
So I want to just, because you pulled up the site plan, I just want to,
Oh, yeah.
so the blue circle is where the Clavel cabin is, and that is representing the expansion of the
Activity.
the hard, heavy dash line.
That's actually bubbling it. The activity envelope's this lighter one.
Oh,
going
okay.
around, but yeah.
And that's just to get equipment in and stuff, just to build the house, basically.
Just to restore
And to
it.
contain the improvements within the activity envelope. Yeah.
Like drainage.
Yeah, the cabin's built into the hill, and we want to keep that natural connection. But so there is some stabilization that needs to happen. It's kind of sinking.
And that's where the big house is going.
The big house here, and it's built out at 7,500 square feet, and to kind of walk back, this is the driveway. So, Woody Creek along this area, and then you come up the hill this way and enter the property by veering driver's right past the main house and then down to the agricultural complex, which we are doing an activity envelope amendment to contain this Clavel Homestead. There are a few site plan differences. You know, this riding arena was to the north of the agricultural complex. The owner decided they wanted it on the south, but ultimately the area of influence within the activity envelope is remaining the same, except for that bump out for the Clavel Homestead. So
Remaining the same as what's already been approved?
yeah, for the primary residence. And so the request to the board is for a minor amendment to the activity envelope, a major amendment to a development agreement, special review for the CDU, as well as a GMQS exemption for exempt floor area from GMQS for through the incentive program for additional floor area to accommodate the Clavel Homestead. And I think it's important to highlight that the development agreement was signed and executed between the BOCC and the HOA. And we, prior to doing this entire land use process, we approached the Craigs because they're very growth conscious and development conscious. They didn't want to see Paradise Mesa just explode with 15,000 square foot homes on all 8 parcels. And so we went to them, got their support. We got signatures from Jennifer Craig, Michael Craig, and David Dill as majority of the HOA board for support for this project. And they are big proponents of preserving the Clavel Homestead, as well as in support of a minor increase in floor area of 846 square feet. So yeah, will reiterate, the development agreement allows 7,500 square feet. The inclusion of the single-family residence caretaker unit will increase that allowance. I kind of covered all this stuff.
Is the house built already?
It's under construction.
Patty, did you have a question?
I think Kelly, you want to go first?
I have a couple questions. Do you?
Okay, yeah, my question is, what is the preserved how many acres are we reserving as the fields, the pasture?
I was about to get to that, yeah.
Oh,
So
beat you to it.
You beat me to it. And that was Leslie's primary concern when reviewing this is, are the irrigated lands being affected? And the original land use application demonstrated that less than 5% of irrigated lands are going to be impacted. And with this, we are actually, gosh, my mouse keeps disappearing.
5%?
Less than 5% will be impacted, and actually it's even less than what was originally proposed because this sliver, if I can get my mouse back, this sliver is being added as irrigated pastures.
Brought back in.
And which demonstrates that the irrigated lands produce a high yield, and that's how the applicant intends to continue to use the property. They're committed to the preservation of agricultural lands. They put up hay, they keep horses, and really they want a caretaker in this unit so that he's in close proximity to this agricultural complex. And this is just a zoomed in image of, I didn't talk about the sheds, but areas that are changing. They added these loafing sheds to support the agricultural operation. The riding arena moved from the north to the south, and the Clavel Homestead is over here. So
Is the pond already there?
the pond is already there. And, the pond they can use for sprinkler irrigation, which is actually a much more effective use of water for irrigating the crops. And so that's another carrot, I suppose, if you guys are looking for carrots.
We are.
And that really sums it up. I got a brief overview here. These are the levers. We're asking for an amendment to an activity envelope, and then the legislative levers that we're pulling are amendment to the development agreement, HOA covenants, subdivision covenants, special review for a CDU, and the incentive for floor area bonus exempt from GMQS in order to allow the Clavel Homestead to be used as a CDU with 846, I'm sorry, that's a typo, and to support the agricultural uses and preservation of the land for a visible county resource. I was going to say just from State Highway 82, but also from the community school as well. So that's all I got, and we'll take
Kelly?
questions if you
No,
got
I
it.
had one more.
Oh, sorry.
Talking about the CDU, is there any way the applicant would be interested in adding language specific to, it could probably be in a covenant, to keeping that ranch manager's home occupied by somebody who works on the ranch? Because I know CDUs don't technically have to be rented, but I think that's the intent of the applicant from what I'm hearing. So is there any way we could secure that more with some language in a covenant? Is there any interest in maybe doing that?
Well, I was trying to emphasize ranch manager unit as often as I could in this presentation, because that is the intent, and they have this huge complex and want a full-time employee there to oversee it. If you guys wanted to,
I don't want to, because what if they have children that they want to have live there, the next
Yeah.
generation, or
Well, they have 700, they have 7,000 some odd square feet in their residence, but I just think, I like it if somebody says, my intent is to do X. I like to secure that, because for me, I think they need to have a ranch manager up there, and then I would think they would want to have him on site.
the one response I would say to that is one, we got to check with the applicant. I
Right,
can't
I know
really
that, that's why.
answer that on their behalf. But two is that there are much larger asks for incentives, like an entire free market dwelling unit up
I'm
to
familiar with
5750. So I don't want to overly encumber the client with a deed restriction when we think it's a very reasonable ask. But
I thought I would just throw it out there,
Sure.
so maybe for consideration. Thanks.
Kelly?
Yes, and I support Patty. I always like these to be housing people when they're saying that they're intended to house people. My questions are all of the remaining historic assets being included under this preservation request?
I would say yes. The cabin is obviously the most intact that can be used again. And then I showed you some photos of the remnants. There's other pictures of logs and sticks that I spared you showing those. But yeah, I feel pretty confident. Susanna's been to the site with me a few times. You feel the same? Yeah.
I wouldn't be doing our client justice without bringing it up, but the wife and the husband are split on the matter. They would like, the husband doesn't want the remaining remnants there and was requesting to remove them. Susanna put a condition in the historic language that they should be preserved. And I think it's best practice through historic designation to preserve them, but I told them I
The
would
wife may
ask.
win out on this one.
Told
Well,
them I would ask.
And I was also thinking, like, is there something to come back for and ask for additional incentives in the future related
Right,
to
that's
this
what I was-
property?
Not that I'm aware of. I walked around, Susanna's walked around. We try to grab it all at once.
Okay.
Yeah, and can I just tack real quick?
Yeah, I have
Yeah,
one
the
more
language in Leslie's stuff says should be actively preserved, documented. I would like to put must be. I think photographs to document and put them in the record are important to preserve the whole aspect. If we're gonna preserve this amazing homestead, the house, let's preserve the activity that went on around it. Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, and then my last question is, when we grant a GMQS exemption, does that get subtracted from our total GMQS allotment?
No, it does not. It's not part of the
Question.
buckets that we have,
Oh,
various buckets.
but it could be. They could get it without having to do more, but we could subtract it from our allotment with a code change, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, thank you. I wasn't sure. Thank you.
Can I just want to clarify the remnants. I think you saw also in Susanna's referral comments that she wants the remnants preserved, but they don't have to be restored
Right.
or anything like that.
And
Okay.
documented.
Yeah.
So
as they are today.
My question about the remnants, is the old outhouse still there, or remains of it? And I think when I look at all the doors coming out of the various bedrooms, they were put there so it's the shortest distance to get to the outhouse so the kids wouldn't have to go through the whole rest of the house
Yeah,
to
Tony mentioned
go
that.
out. And I think that
Steve, we want you to go up there and dig around
you
and
could
find
figure
it.
out where the old outhouse was, then that could explain how, some of the reasons why the house was the way it is.
They ran down to Chris Davenport's house because we preserved the outhouse on his property, if you remember that.
And I have regretted many times that we took down the old homestead house on our ranch, the Paul
I thought
K
you were going to
house.
say you moved the outhouse.
And we burned the old outhouse because it was right in close to the construction of my folks' house. And it's like, I kick myself over and over again that was part of the history of the Roaring Fork Valley, just like this house is. And it's like, we should have preserved it, done whatever we needed to do to preserve it, even at extra cost or effort. But,
Francie would like that.
so this one, to me, that means this one has to be preserved.
The house or the
To
outhouse?
make up for your sins.
Yeah.
I want to address your thing about the CDU.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's so many exceptions that could occur in these people's lives that I really don't want to encumber their property any more than we already do with the CDU restrictions. For instance, if they have a ranch manager that they really want and who's really good, but he already has his own housing, why would we make him move to their house? That kind of thing. So I feel like we do a pretty good job of encumbering people's properties. And I just don't really want to overdo it.
I'm not saying specific to the ranch manager.
Oh,
I'm
I
just
thought
saying
you
it
did say
needs
that.
to be rented, preferably to the ranch manager or somebody who works on the ranch, but it needs to be rented as an employee housing unit of some sort.
Well, CDUs have to, if they're going to be rented, they
No.
have to be rented to employees of the county anyway, right?
If they're gonna be rented.
Yeah, if they're rented. So
If they're
that's
rented.
already taken care of.
If
And
they're rented.
yeah, but there is a language that says you don't have to rent.
No, but a lot of people don't technically rent them, but somebody other than an employee or anybody who qualifies lives in them. I'm just saying, I'm more comfortable, but I can understand your point, and I think that they are not asking for the moon, which they could ask for the whole litany of requests. You could ask for the whole list, and they've chosen not to, so I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah.
I'm not dead set. I'd rather make sure we preserve the house.
Yeah, that's, to me,
And
is
the
the
outhouse if
key.
we can find it.
I'll look.
You nailed it
Thanks, Steve.
completely for me, because it is a modest request for 876 square feet.
Yeah.
And they could ask for a lot more for this.
And they will have restrictions
846.
because it's going to be registered as a historic. So it's already got a lot of restrictions on it from being labeled historic. So I don't know. I mean, the chances that they have a son or a daughter who wants to live there someday and doesn't want to be the ranch manager, I would have a hard time supporting that. I just wanted to give you a little reason why.
I'm not surprised.
Tapping into my libertarian self here.
But if they have 7,000 some odd square feet of home, yeah. I raised both of my children in 860 square feet. We
So
didn't have an
this is
outhouse, it was in the house.
I'm just waiting for us to be done. Any other comments from commissioners at this point? All right, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody in the public who would like to comment on this Clavel house, old house? Anybody online? Is there anybody online at all?
No one online at all.
Okay, well, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commissioners.
I will make a motion. I will not include the language related to the residential occupying the CDU on behalf of Francie, because I want this to get done. So, and I know you have
Interrupt
to go
real
back
quick.
to the applicant. Yeah.
Can we hear Leslie's?
Yeah, I was going to go to her as
Oh,
soon
yeah,
as she
Leslie,
was
you have
done
some
making her
language
motion.
before I make my motion.
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks, Kelly.
So I thought I had the document up here to show you guys the changes, but I have the wrong document. I'm sorry.
What changes?
So changes in the reso. So,
Oh, yeah.
in your recitals, item 10,
Can you tell us what page?
page 2 of the reso. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know the page in your packet.
Page
Way down.
153.
Thank you so much.
Sorry.
You guys did one heck of a 100-page.
It's a 278 page.
They get big quickly.
Oh, here.
150 what?
Look at them.
Steve, 3?
153.
Thank you so much.
This.
Okay, I'm there, Leslie.
Okay, so as we mentioned, there was a development agreement that was part of the original subdivision, then everybody had to sign it. So here I've been able to, thank you, Abby. So on page 2, oops.
You're gonna delete all that now.
Page 2. Control Z. Page 2 of what?
Page 2, number 10. Well, I'm going to add a new 11 right here. Second amended development agreement was submitted with the land use application and signed by the Craig Ranch HOA, consenting to increase the allowable maximum floor area above 7,500 square feet to allow the historic Clavel homestead to be, used as residential floor area and serve as a caretaker dwelling unit.
We don't need, we don't need to add any specific language that says this is specific only to parcel, what is it, 8?
So you mean, so other parcels don't?
Yeah, so the parcels don't say, hey, this is a broad.
No, it's only for
specific.
the Clavel homestead, so wouldn't apply to other parcels.
Okay, just want to make sure that we're
Right, good point. The chair will sign this development agreement, so we'll just look at that and make sure that it's really specific
Yeah.
to parcel 8.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And then on,
So Francie, I'm trusting you to look.
I'll look very carefully.
I'll make sure on that. And then the very bottom of just before
there's the
recital, I just wanted to point this out to you that on Friday, Cody sent me a new site plan that showed the expanded irrigated pasture land to make sure that we're at 95% preservation. And so as part of this, there'll be an amendment to the activity envelope site plan that was previously approved, and that will be recorded. And so we'll make sure that this additional irrigated land is shown on that amended activity envelope and site plan. But I just wanted you guys, since I raised it in my memo as a concern, I wanted you guys to see that. And then under the conditions, we're just saying here, like I said up above,
So there
concurrent
it kind of covers.
within 180 days of this approval, we're recording a covenant, and we're specifying, what's in the covenant, the amended activity envelope that I just mentioned, and then I'm just clarifying that the proposed second amendment to the development agreement.
Okay, so that kind of.
That will be
That kind
recorded.
of covers what my concern was right there, actually.
Yeah, so those are the language changes in the reso for you.
Thank you, Leslie. I have a random question. When you say a loafing shed, what do you mean when you say a loafing shed?
Should we read the description of the code?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean pursuant to the just definition of loafing shed in the code, which is to serve the agricultural use of the property.
So it could be a tractor, not a loafing
it's
horse or cow?
storage of hay and, tools.
The code says it's a 3-sided covered structure no greater than 300 square feet.
And the use is not specified?
Solely for livestock. Yeah, animals.
Solely for?
Solely for livestock protection.
That's what I thought it was. It's a place for them to go to get out of the sun and stuff.
So our loafing shed, we used it for, over the years, various things, hay storage, calving pens for livestock, just general shelter for calves to go in. We stored tractors and balers and different things in parts of it. And that was all typical use on a ranch for a loafing shed.
In general-
And ours was maybe bigger. What was the square footage?
300
you
square
said?
feet. You can't get a baler into a 300 square feet, I don't
No,
think.
so
Yeah,
let me figure
300.
out, ours was
Bigger.
12 by 36.
Bigger.
When
about,
we
or
talked to our
no, more than
client
12.
and asked, do they have equipment storage needs? That's when we would label it an equipment storage.
Yeah,
shed.
that's why I was asking, because I think that is a misnomer to call it a loafing shed, because traditionally, historically, and according to Webster, a loafing shed is for shade for animals and getting out of the rain. But I certainly have seen a lot of loafing sheds have lots of stuff in them. So I'm just curious whether, Suzanne, that's just an extension of our definition of a
But
loafing
it's
shed?
only
or
300 square
Should we
feet.
name it something else besides a loafing shed?
Well,
I
as-
know this is really picking
no.
you, and I'm sorry, but
Yeah, as
Can't
part
change
of,
the code
as
right
part
here.
of the previous activity envelope and site plan review,
Change the code
there,
definition right here.
the equine facility was proposed and approved, which included a barn, an equipment barn. The size of the property gives them a lot of exempt agricultural square footage on this property that was previously approved as part of the activity envelope. 2 of the loafing sheds were approved, and now they're adding 2 more
right,
to this, yeah.
that's what I'm asking about, the two they're adding in.
But I mean, you're the rancher, not me, but if you look at the site plan and you look at where the loafing sheds are proposed, they're kind of out in the pasture area.
Yeah, well, it's fine. I'm just saying that I thought it was specifically for livestock, not for equipment and stuff. So, and I don't really care if they put their tractor in it. It's just sort of a nomenclature thing,
So
like,
does that mean that that's where the cows go to loaf?
yes, that's exactly what it means. That's
I've
that's
never
what it
known
is.
a cow to loaf. The cow just
Or horses
loafing
in this
around down
case.
there.
All they do is.
So,
So on the Moran property, there will be about $8 in their loafing shed. You go by there in the summer.
oh, that's
One at a
awesome.
time, they'll go out across
Really?
the field.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
With-
We got one loafing in front of the courthouse yesterday afternoon. Not a cow, but
So anyway, I just wanted to point that out, that there is this
If you're,
thing going on.
if you're concerned about limiting the activity that could go on within the structure, the size is the most limiting factor. And if you call
Right.
something a loafing shed, then the size limitation in the code applies. And that's how somebody could get south with a neighbor or somebody else who calls it in.
Yeah.
So
But
if you
should we
want to
change the
call it-
language?
If you want to call it something else, then the size limitation wouldn't
Yeah.
implicitly be there. Or they would have to fall back, as Leslie said, on the greater ag exemption just to create a new structure in a different location for equipment or vehicles or whatever.
I don't know, I mean, should we change the language?
we
or-
can't change the language here. It's a code amendment.
I'm
No, in
not
the-
suggesting we
the
change it
poop.
right here. I'm having a conversation with Suzanne.
I know, I'm just
Thank
letting
you,
you
Patty.
know.
I've come to join
Suzanne.
you.
Give me
So
a break.
when we created all the ag building exemptions in the code, the process we went through at the time and the people we engaged in that discussion, we wanted to be very specific about the types of structures. And livestock run-in or loafing shed is a very specific category with a specific size limitation, a height limitation. It's 3-sided. It differentiates it from an equipment storage building or a barn or a hay storage facility. But we have different exempt floor areas for all of those types of structures. So again, the size they get an unlimited number of loafing sheds under the code, but each one of those can't be any more than 300 square feet, and it has to be 3-sided dirt floor. Again, so those were the sort of, the criteria we attached to the different types of structures to try and differentiate them and the use. Also, any ag building, we do require them to record a covenant that says it's an ag building, it's going to be an ag building. And I think we call out, this is, the types of structures that are subject to that covenant. So that's what we have in the code today. So for us, if it's a loafing shed, that's where some animal gets to loaf. and it's not for other things.
Right, but it is intended for other things. So that's my problem.
Okay.
It's not
Well, the
intended for a
covenant-
place for animals to loaf, it's intended for equipment or hay storage, and it's just a language thing, but it's kind
Well,
of
if
like,
if that's how it gets used, in theory, we have the ability to enforce and say, if they're gonna, you're not using your right bucket of square footage. You either have to use some of your barn square footage if you want a different type of agricultural building. It's not a loafing shed if you're gonna store equipment in it. You can't use that exemption, agricultural exemption for it. You have to take it out of one of your other buckets, which there are a number of for a property that size to use.
and so we're all okay with the discrepancy in language and the discrepancy in uses, we're not gonna.
Well, there
I
have
guess I
enough
don't know.
acreage to have submit for an equipment storage shed too. I may have misspoke, so I apologize. But they're not, they're asking for loafing sheds, so you got me on your ranching experience on that
Well,
one.
I mean, I agree with you, Fran. We should say what it is and approve what
Well,
they
especially
want.
since we approved them all over the place.
But we haven't let them build it to find out if they're gonna loaf in it or not. So let's give them the opportunity. If they choose to put a tractor in it, we can call them on it and say, you're not loafing in the shed, you're tractoring
The
it.
application was not, the application was clear. You were asking for
Loafing.
2 more loafing sheds.
Yeah.
Steve?
So they must know what they're asking for, but if you could clarify that on Cape McBride's and on Lazy O, there are lots of little horse shelters, shade shelters out in the fields, and are those loafing sheds? Some of them just have one side, they're not enclosed on the other 2 sides. But they're shade structures, and they are a blight on the landscape, if you ask my honest opinion, because they have so many of them. I think they were allowed like unlimited amounts of them. I would rather have a bigger, and I figured ours was probably about 800 square feet, a bigger multi-purpose shed that could be used for, you know,
Maybe they just want them.
animals to be out of the weather, or you could put hay in it, or you could put a piece of farm equipment in it. It's like lots of purposes, but having one bigger building there, and it's not all that much bigger, like, you know, sort of twice as big, but to me, it's more functional, but it would
Yeah,
be,
yeah.
you can't decide, it would be up to the applicant if, to change what they wanted to do, and they probably figured out what they want to do for their horses, and that's what is in the application.
You know, and for this particular piece of property, it's probably not going to be a nuisance, but there are properties where animal sheds are turned into hideous things, you know, with stuff spilling out of them and, you know, actually toxic chemicals stored in them all over the place around here. So, you know, I'm just, these people are probably very tidy, and it's probably not an issue, but Patty?
Yeah, so we wouldn't allow them to put any restrictions on their CDU, but now we're gonna micromanage their loafing shed. So let's either stay with you have private property rights or you don't. And if we wanna have a discussion on whether you loaf in a shed or not, can we bring it back at another time?
This is a nomenclature problem, not
Well,
a restriction problem.
you know, originally, as part of their activity, I was going to say that.
Loaf in the CDU.
Only if you're a cow. No, the ranch manager can loaf out in that shed. I don't know.
So one thing that is missing in this that maybe it would help you is so when they did their activity envelope and site plan review, because there were agricultural structures as part of that, they entered into a covenant that we require when someone gets exempt ag square footage. So to add loafing sheds, more loafing sheds to this property, I should add under condition 3, we'll add D and say that the agricultural covenant shall be amended to reflect the 2 new loafing sheds as defined in the code. How about that? If we do
Fine. Fine.
So looking at the site plan, they do have hay storage shed, they have a horse barn, they have
I
another
know.
barn, which is probably more
Equipment.
And is the loafing shed adjacent to a
equipment,
pasture?
and then they have
Yes.
the two loafing sheds are adjacent to paddocks. So they'd be like a shade shelter for the horses when they're in that paddock,
A
I
little
presume.
stall, sort of.
Oh, I thought all
Yeah.
cows
Okay.
could use.
So it looks appropriate, like that's what they're
Mm-hmm.
gonna be used for. They don't need them for hay, cause they have
A
a
hay
way
barn.
bigger hay shed elsewhere.
So would the board be amenable if we added in the
You
conditions?
don't have to add anything.
We had 3D that the agricultural covenant also needs to be
It does
amended to
clarify,
Yeah,
reflect
okay.
the two.
I can't even, I
Sheds.
can't even say the word anymore.
Loafing shed.
So,
It's used very loosely here in this county.
so if Leslie's done, I was gonna do a motion.
Okay.
I don't know if I
That's
can.
better
with a straight
include the
face. I'm
definition
so
of
sorry.
loafing shed.
I am going to do a motion to approve. This is a mouthful. A resolution designating the Clavel homestead to the Pickens County Historic Register, yea, and granting an incentive for the designation, granting special review approval and GMQS exemption for a caretaker dwelling unit, and approving an amendment to the activity envelope site plan and development agreement for 153 LLC, 345 Paradise, I love that, Paradise Drive, Craig Ranch, parcel 8.
I'll second.
Is that okay without including anything
The
about what you said you wanted to change in the?
Oh, I'll add to my motion and amendments to the covenant agreement and
Amendments to the resolution as
Resolution
proposed by
as-
staff.
thank you.
That,
And I will second.
okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, you have more
Yeah,
discussion?
I love this project. I think this is
Can't wait to see
awesome
it.
to preserve a bit of
I wanna go see the
the original history of the agriculture in the upper Roaring Fork Valley. This is like so cool.
Yes.
And I think it's a good use because the inside will be different, but the outside will be preserved.
I think it's very cool.
And it will be preserved because it's being used as a dwelling unit and will be taken care of.
I want to come up and see it.
Yeah, I'd love to live in it. It looks so awesome. That's great. All right, let's vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you, thanks.
All right, there you go. Nice job on your first presentation.
I know,
It's a
good job.
pleasure. Thank you so much.
Sorry for the little sense of humor we threw.
I made it fun.
Who says the public process isn't fun?
Who
And
says?
full of humor.
This is like a sausage making process like
Oh,
the Italians used to do.
Yeah, the deals.
Okay, let's have open discussions. You got anything?
Unless you want to talk about procrastinating sheds or.
I
think
I
I'm
have
good.
one thing.
I have one thing too, so go ahead.
I would like, at some point, soon, to put a brief discussion about Proposition HH.
Yeah.
I thought we talked about it already. Ian came in.
Yeah, I just think we need to bring it out closer to the election, maybe get it out there to the voting public.
It is so hard to read it in the blue book.
Yeah.
I mean, I read every word and it's like, oh, this is so hard.
Well, I want the specific, what the gaps may be for Pitkin County, what we may not be able to collect, and what the fill-in we might not be able to get, because we're Pitkin County.
Yeah, and maybe we can incorporate that even into some of our budget discussions. I know Ann has been tracking that, and
But
it's.
I'd like to do it where the public would actually be watching, and I don't know. Some of the public does watch all of the budget, but, so just something brief, but I would like to have something, sooner than later. Just, this is what it says, this is what it would mean to Pitkin County. If it's approved, this is what it would mean to Pitkin County if it's not approved.
Okay.
Pretty specific. Is that okay?
We, Kelly and I, at a minimum, possibly more, would like to pursue the Jackson Hole Airport visit and conversation with, what's his name?
Jim Elwood is our former airport
Yeah.
director. Yeah.
So could you maybe get in touch with him and see what would be a good time for us to do that?
Let's fly up in the middle of winter.
And bring my skis while we do it.
And, obviously, if it's more
So-
than two,
I'm
then
not
We have to figure out how to notice it.
Well,
Bring Ellen with us.
it's a bigger problem. I'd want to encourage the board to maybe select a couple representatives, because otherwise we have to provide a reasonable accommodation for any and all public that
know,
would
that's
also
what-
like to
Yeah.
attend that meeting.
So-
I'm not quite sure what that would look like.
Yeah, more than likely it would look like something online.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to understand what their operating model is. I don't think I need to go see their airport for that. So if anything, I would like to maybe set up a Zoom with Jim and have him explain to us how their airport operates, both the commercial and the GA. I think that would be beneficial for me. I don't necessarily need to see their operations on the ground.
But
If we could see, like, good photographs or drone, have a drone fly over the GA operation, just so we could have, a good picture in our minds when we are then learning about how they do it differently than we're doing it.
I don't know if they can fly drones
They
around.
might not be able to fly a drone,
Over the
but maybe
airport?
just pictures from the ground or
Well, Kelly and I will
video.
take pictures from the airport.
But we can, yeah. We can try and get some information, but I'm hearing two different things right now. I'm hearing two commissioners that want to actually do a site visit. And then also for the rest of the board wanting to do an online.
I would like to talk with Jim Elwood, who I've known for 20 years, and just say,
I
how
think
do
we
you-
should do both. I mean, I do think the whole board should have access to whatever Jim has to say, for sure.
Yeah, so if you guys want to fly up there and see it, and then you zoom in the meeting when you're talking to him, that would work for me. I just don't think that we all need to jump in a small plane and travel through the Rocky Mountains in the middle of the winter. And I don't see the benefit of actually seeing the site on the ground, but if others do, that's their choice. But I think that there's definitely a benefit to talking with Jim and finding out how they operate their FBO, how they operate their whole facility, actually.
Okay, so we're going to be asking for both. We're going to be asking for a site visit and
Well, apparently there's two that want to
Well,
go and see the site, but I
I
think
don't know
all-
why we couldn't schedule the meeting with the board that does not travel.
That's what I just
while,
said, while
right,
we're there.
while we are there.
Yeah.
So we're all hearing the same thing at the same time.
Just Zoom meeting from
Yeah,
Right.
Jacksonville
Jim's office or
Airport.
wherever.
yeah,
Two present, two by remote, and the public can join in on that Zoom.
yeah. And those of us who don't go can sit in this room and watch it, and the public can, yeah, it's really easy. It's not like planning a party. We can pull it off.
I know you
Okay,
can do
we'll
this
talk.
in your spare time, Tom.
yeah, we'll we'll talk to them about it.
Yeah, that's exactly, Kelly, what I was trying to get across, but wasn't getting there. I was still loafing.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So one more.
Yeah.
Well, I want to go back to H8. I meant to say yesterday at CCI, it was after Kelly left the meeting, CCI voted to oppose HH by a large,
Oppose it, HH?
Oppose
By
it.
a large
to
margin?
oppose it by a large margin.
What's the other one? I?
They did, huh? That's
So,
interesting.
and I think a lot of the reasoning is that they're taking the Tabor refund back from everybody and then giving these property tax benefits to a few. And I think that's what, that
Who are
just,
the few? How do you qualify?
well, it was, I mean, I don't totally understand
No,
the
the
whole property
rebate
tax.
goes to everybody, whether you're a resident or an income tax payer at all. And the rebate, they're taking back from only the people who live here and pay taxes. So the people who don't live here but own property are getting their taxes reduced. But those of us who live here, we may be getting our taxes reduced, but we're losing our Tabor refund.
Yeah.
So
And that's the
That's how
gist
it
of the objection, why these groups are
that's
objecting to
how
it.
I understand it is
Yeah,
working.
that's my understanding too.
I see.
Have
Well,
you
I
guys
sure
taken
didn't
a
get that
position?
from the Blue Book.
No, that's why I want to have the discussion.
Yeah. So anyhow, I just wanted to let you know, and I think we all got the email from CCI also about
Yeah.
that the
And
vote
Kelly is
was
our
to
tax person, can
oppose.
explain the whole thing to
CML
us.
is opposed to it. These
I do have
various
some
groups are
questions that I
coming
don't
in
fully
line
understand.
opposing
We need
HH.
to have that.
Well, because some of it is, there are some elements of it that are direct, like amendments, and, you know, are required, like that language will be changed by the voters, and that change will persist. And then there's other elements of it that can go back through the legislative process to
Yeah.
be changed.
And there's
and
some of it
cleaned
that
up,
you only
you
get,
know?
you only get this
So-
benefit for so many years, and then we get, the state can take it over and run it all by themselves, and it's like, that's the part that's a little sketchy, so we need to have that discussion.
And I think Ann can detangle some of that, although it is
Yeah, that would be great.
confusing.
Maybe this is Drew's opportunity to, what's his name?
No,
No, what's his name? Came from the sheriff's department?
Levi.
Levi. Maybe it's his opportunity to step up as our legislative conductor.
And speaking of Levi, could he come in and get introduced to us at some point? Because we've never really met him, nor have we met Sam. I'm not even trying to get a hold of really either one of
Sam,
them.
and Sam was introduced to
I
us.
know- She was formally at a meeting? Oh, I must not have been here.
Just now, today.
No,
No.
previous to
Yeah.
today. She was not really introduced today. She was introduced. You might not have been here, I'm
I
not
don't
sure.
think, I missed that part.
I do want to follow up on regarding more legislative stuff. We need to close the loop with our municipalities about land use.
Yeah.
Because I'm feeling paralyzed for us to move forward
Okay.
without understanding
Yeah, I agree with that.
where they're at.
Okay. I'm not
Alright,
sure when,
Thank
but
you. After the budget.
Well, I mean, you know, I'm happy to go talk to Sarah and Jen and Clint and, you know, everybody. I mean, it's fine. It's just sort of looking to John to navigate that request.
Yeah, and I yes, okay.
This isn't news, right?
No.
Okay, good. Not a shock.
anything else?
No, but would you entertain a motion
I
to
would.
adjourn? I will make a motion to adjourn. Thank you very much.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thanks, guys. Good job, Francie.
So what is our plan for tomorrow, John?